Hey, what's going on, guys? Are we live? I tried something a little different this time. Oh man, the Twitter stream. Well, we'll see. Well, welcome everyone. We can check the links. How's everyone doing? Charles? Charles Otto's William Wade? It's been, let me see here. Hey. Well, good to see Charles here. If there's any replay gang in the future, well, I should say we can kind of wait a little bit here. So, excuse me. Hey, here's some familiar faces. Paul W. Hall, Truth Mystery. Yeah. What did you guys think? Did you guys miss the show? Hey, don't worry, Truth Mystery. We'll get into that. I guess this is my opportunity to catch up with chat because usually I'm scrambling towards the end. But yeah, there's a lot to cover. I tried to get the show to go live on Twitter, like either Geo or the Prudentialist does, but I don't know. I thought I set up the thing. Hey, the MACF. Am I saying that right? Thank you, man. Thank you. Well, I'm glad people are interested. Let's see, just stream. Yeah. It's been a while. So yeah. Well, I wanted to clarify some things, and I guess this is a nice opportunity to do so. And for the sake of replay gang, I don't want to wait a super long time because then you're going to have this gap in the beginning of the show, and I don't want to bore the audience. So I want all that to be addressed before we get into some of the lore, the summer lore of 2023. Hey, there he is, Mutant. I'm glad to see the old crew. Well, first of all, I'd like to clarify something. Of course, I'm a young guy, so it's probably expected to walk some things back or maybe modify certain things that have been said on this show in past episodes. So, for those that don't know, on the surface, this show is already strange because there's all kinds of dissident right content. There's all kinds of personalities on the dissident right. And so to have a show that emerges within the last year or so, I guess some people are a little confused about what exactly is the brand with certain people effectively. And for this show, maybe some people in the audience feel that way, or maybe there's back and forth because Thomas is on the show and it gets political. And then some of these solo streams, or not solo streams, this is an interactive show. So maybe solo is not the correct word for a bunch of different reasons. But the shows with Thomas are interactive too, but this is a little different. And I know that there's something strange about the pop culture angle in the Distant Ride because there are a few examples of those already. And so when you rehash some of another political stream that is on YouTube, maybe the fact that it's on YouTube is another luxury, but I want to clarify some of those things. Hey, bass guitarist, somebody who I saw this month. So it looks like our guys are here. So I'm going to, and I saw Garrick Obama is back on Twitter. That was one of the last things I saw before I went live. So what a nice little surprise. I just want certain people to know that we're live here. So we'll start in a little bit here. But yeah, I see we got some familiar people here. And I was talking with somebody yesterday. Oh gosh, and then there's an announcement. So sorry, I'm a little overwhelmed. Maybe the pacing's a little different today because I was very stressful before going live because I was trying to get myself behind the desk. So that's not always an easy thing for me. What else am I forgetting? Am I forgetting? What is it? Okay, there's Telegram. See, I have to remember how to do the show. That's the other obstacle. Is there anybody else? I guess I can put this over here. Anyways. Man, I don't know what went wrong with the Twitter thing. That's I asked Geo about it, I think this week. So I don't know. Anyways, we got to march on. So here's the thing. In the last stream, and then I think on Academic Agent show, because that's the other thing too. And it's funny because there's been some developments after I was on that show. And it's funny, given the topic of that stream, that's the other part with the Dissident Ride is things seem to change. Some of the players seem to change reputations after a few months. So that's the other part. That's the other obstacle. But I wanted to clarify that this show is strange because it's not strictly political. And I think most people are mostly focused from a political mindset. Maybe some people have a Bronze Age mindset. And so I understand there are some difficulties grasping certain things. And I just wanted to say that beforehand, I would reference Jonathan Bowden. And I would say that because I was fascinated by that book, Pulp Fascism, which I think is free on one of those channels like Counter Rev. And I basically wanted to use that as a model for kind of a kind of narrative, not like a narrative, but as a style for the show and maybe some of the topics that we go over. This isn't something that seems to really mesh with a Spangler book or a Nietzsche book. This is more pop culture friendly. But I think maybe it's appropriate after spending some time with some of that literature, maybe it's appropriate to clarify, because you go into certain spaces and people are referencing books, people are trying to worldview contra worldview, and already that's a political style. And so it seems contradictory to cite somebody like Bowden and then basically engage in the same type of political competition. So I think just to kind of lay everything out transparently, and maybe I was also figuring some things out in the last few months too. So I wasn't myself, I was learning as I'm kind of doing the show. So I'd like to clarify like the Bowden stuff and some of the pop culture stuff that we talk about is not an endorsement on authors or ideas. And last semester, I gave a speech effectively about like modernism, and maybe that helped gather some of my thoughts. And so, like, when, like, for example, if you have a book like Beyond Good and Evil by Nietzsche, or you have The Birth of Tragedy, I don't think the goal is to mimic books like that and to just kind of update it for a 21st century audience. I don't think the goal is to take Pulp Fascism by Jonathan Bowden and, instead of talking about Punch and Judy, talk about some of the more relevant things that are in American and English culture, and then media culture too. Talk about postmodernism. I think that is also a political approach. And so, what I want to clarify in this stream is that some of the people that I've cited before, some people that try to, like harmonize some of the Nietzschean and right wing stuff, I think it would probably just be more. I would be more eligible to just say that I'm talking about some of these concepts rather than try to say this is some heir to, the Bowden right, or some of the art right was the topic of a Twitter space, I think, a few months ago. So that's the thing, like Richard Wagner has that essay or book, Art and Revolution. And on this show, I want us to declare Jesus Christ is better than Apollo. I want this show to be Gen Z, the future of young, right wing, dissident right. And that's the kind of difference between Academic Agent Show or some of the places where we may have migrated from before we got here, before you guys were tuning into some of the Thomas streams. This is like talking about pop culture, not trying to like appropriate it for right wing means. And I'll get into that when talking about the some of the movies over this summer, because I think that's honestly like a good example of some of the stuff that happened on Twitter. And it's already been a month, so it's kind of funny. Like, the show is back, but a lot of the topics are like a month-ish old already. So, I wanted to talk about Oppenheimer and Barbie. Now that all the dust has been settled with people fighting that out on the timeline, now it's safe to kind of go in and look at what were the results of some of these takes, and what does that kind of reveal about the dissident right? The fact that it is this pop culture adjacent thing, but maybe they have some political hangups that prevent them from being authentic pop cultural critics. So, yeah, I would like to see myself as somebody who, if I'm talking about Nietzsche or Spangler, obviously I would probably disagree with them religiously and politically, but I think a lot of people just kind of get swept up in a lot of these concepts without really clarifying with everybody that they are not, in fact, Nietzscheans. They are not trying to also compete for political hegemony the way the other channels are. I'm more so kind of coming at it from an art critic perspective. When I talk about films, it's not an endorsement on the things in the films, but I feel like a lot of that is not said because it might be a little awkward to clarify every step of the way that, when we're talking about Nietzsche, it doesn't mean we agree with him, or when we're doing critiquing certain things that it's mostly from a cultural perspective. And I think it's easy to forget that because a lot of this dissident right scene is political. So it's funny. It's like there was a stream with Destiny where he was arguing with some, I think, like college student type. And the student was saying, like, when Andrew Tate got banned and when Trump got banned, he implied that there was a decrease in those types of movements and normalization of those ideas. And effectively it worked. So, Destiny, if you're a principled progressive, why don't you endorse deplatforming? Because it supports your side and there's no incentive for you to play the middleman because it looks like you're just running cover for the right. He didn't say all that, of course, but seems like some of those concepts are implied in the discussion. And Destiny gave some response like, well, as a progressive, you need to be able to engage in dialectics, and the college campus is the last bastion of free speech because, and I thought this was interesting because this is something that I think is like normie friendly, that you could just say if people were to address you publicly. The idea that college, you have the opportunity, and I know this is like kind of boomerish to say, but like college is the place where people are supposed to debate ideas. And even if we're not free speech absolutists, and even if we wouldn't support things like, like people doing blasphemy, there probably should be a penalty for something like that. But, all the political theory aside, the idea that Destiny believes that, or says he believes that at college you have all these safety nets. If you want to have a Nazi party on campus, that should be allowed because it allows dissent and it allows the left to sharpen their arguments against the far right. Whereas if this person goes through college and they don't get any pushback and then they graduate, they're not going to be able to have a safety net like they do in college, where they can kind of get roped back into the mainstream or more liberal friendly views. And if you become radicalized after graduation, he said, like, who are you going to talk to? People in the comment section? He's implying that you're like isolated after graduation. And again, we don't have to agree with all the aspects of this premise, but it is to say, like, when he's arguing with this college student type, he's trying to say that, like, there's these ideas are out there, and there's like not just a political answer, there's also like a social thing. But I don't think that was the point I was trying to make. I think the Destiny example kind of threw things off a little bit there. But anyway, the point was, in a political movement, the most dissident thing you can do, the most radical thing you can do, is not be political. So it is kind of contrarian to talk about pop culture as if that's one of the more important topics being neglected. And when you're kind of cynical about activism, it looks like you're just kind of trying to invite people to your party when one of the biggest games in town is doing debates and philosophy and current events. So that's the thing. I just feel like there's an untapped market in the pop culture sphere. And I want to read something that was on IM 1776. Also, not an endorsement, okay, like we said earlier. These are just some examples. And this is one example of what this channel is, because I'm sure that there was some confusion earlier, and especially given some of the stuff that was said about Bowden and some of the it's funny, there was a conversation that happened in Tennessee. We'll get into that in a sec here, but it seemed to be a nice example of what I'm talking about here. So first, I wanna read this, and again, like I said with Nietzsche, Wagner, and Bowden, it's like everybody, it seems to be vaguely familiar of the political identity of these people. I feel like it's redundant to even talk about it. So when I cite a site like IM 1776, which has all these questionable people maybe and some ideas that I want to say a certain example after I read this, but I just want, for the sake of having a model that is clear, because I'm probably not explaining this super well, but I just want to read this as an example as far as what does that mean, pop culture? Anybody can review movies. This doesn't seem like a very significant market that needs to be tapped. Well, let me share screens here, and I'll just read a little bit. All right, just a quick little summary. It is a little lengthy, but we'll try to get through it quick. What the heck? Oh, my goodness. Okay, is this going to work? There we go. So this might have been around in February. I'm not going to read the first part because seems like most people understand that first part already. So, and am I not muted? Okay. So very quickly, just bear with me. Conservative media has grown rapidly in the digital age. but has so far failed to stop or even slow the advance of progress. Conservatives today remain in a cycle of reactive demoralization and paranoia, divided by cynical exploitation of understandable anger, desperate pandering, and craven self-censorship. Meaningful alternatives to the liberal consensus are either ignored or suppressed. Mainstream conservative leaders often repeat Andrew Breitbart's old adage, politics is downstream from culture, but never act on it. Their energies are consumed by criticizing art, which they find offensive, rather than supporting art themselves. On the rare occasions when conservative institutions set out to support right-wing art, these efforts take the form of naked propaganda, conceived from the point of view of securing immediate political goals. The result is that key truths about human nature are concealed, nuance and subtlety is not acknowledged, and genuine artistic expression not championed. This is the death of dissent. And we're almost done here. Against an enemy which survives on lies, truth remains our strongest weapon, but the main agenda of commercial media enterprises is to make money, not propagate truth. Therefore, their content can be controlled by advertisers, distributors, and online platforms, who financially penalize deviations from the approved political discourse. What is needed is the formulation and execution of a long-term strategy for revitalized conservative culture beyond the immediate laws of the market. For this reason, IM 1776 is shifting from a for-profit company into a nonprofit foundation. Our publication will continue to articulate new and alternative directions. Okay, we don't have to read that part. Our team will be tasked with finding and supporting talented writers, visual artists, sculptors, photographers, content creators, and art projects who are committed to challenging the limits of contemporary consensus. Transgression for the sake of transgression isn't our principle. What's needed is a real vision for a better future with truth and beauty at its core. And then here we can end with some of these last lines here. In addition to supporting individual creators as well as our writers' journey and reporting around the world, contributions will also be used to support the development of real-world events and collaboration through art exhibitions, summits, book launches, and other events. Writers and artists across the West will find an opportunity to showcase their work and connect with the wider public. Our aim is to support a cultural project that elevates the human spirit, not obeying the laws of corporations, the agendas of bureaucrats, or the crazed demands of ideologues. And again, not an endorsement of everything on the site, but that's the general thing I was trying to say. And it's difficult because I'm trying to like half remember some of the stuff from past streams, but that's the idea that there is a pop culture perspective on the dissident right that doesn't even have to support pop culture. Because that's the other thing too. Like we'll get into Oppenheimer and Barbie later on, but Base Brandt seemed to maybe unintentionally have the best take, which most would probably take as a contrarian one. But he was talking about how like both films were mid or like below average. And it's like, in some ways, that is what the show is. It's kind of a critique against pop culture without even cheerleading most pop culture. So it is a bit contrarian and annoying. It's like I said, it's like the most radical thing you can do in a political movement is not be political, but not for the sake, like they said, not for the sake of being transgressive. It's because in order to like be authentic, to talk about this stuff without being like all the other channels, you would have to just be a critic. Because if you said things like, you know, if certain people wanted to be Nietzscheans and they wanted to kind of have a right-wing postmodernism, you think of somebody like Richard Rorty, that would be just as political as the people that Jordan Peterson critiques. And so that's kind of the limit of politics, is somebody like me feels neglected, and maybe Zoomers don't totally mesh with the millennials on Twitter or some of the BAP sphere or dissident right, vague sphere, or, you know, some of the more British commentators on the dissident right. There is that generational gap. There's also a content gap, because everything is political and it's theorizing. And I think sort of that's something that doesn't really get said, because it sounds weird to say, why is there so much politics in a political movement? And so that's the thing. There has to be kind of that culture side that's adjacent to the politics. that it's not even like an anti-bookworm take. It's saying applying philosophy in the art world rather than apply philosophy to politics. You know what I mean? And that's not to completely stick our nose up at like all right-wing political activism because it's a waste of time. It's not about demoralizing people. It's just that front is being covered, and the more pop culture type stuff, that kind of takes a different type of perspective outside of politics. So anyway, I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again. Everyone probably understood like 10 minutes ago, but I always feel like there's that confusion because the show is a little bit different. And I also wanted to clarify some of the things said on the past streams. I don't even know if people see how it's any different than somebody doing, a book club on Bowden or Nietzsche. I don't really want to do that on this show. I don't really want to be the political theorist on Nietzsche. I just want to talk about the effect of Nietzsche. And then, I disagree with it for religious reasons, for cultural reasons, because I'm not totally invested into politics. So that's the thing. It's like that was something that I kind of, some of that was in the Collider article I talked about in the last stream, where, things like the advancement of CGI after the first King Kong movie, like that is like culture changing tech that is interesting and has more to do with this show than how tanks evolved after wars and how weapons evolved. That's like a history topic, and that's a political topic because different nations use them. And then you can talk about, how they escalated. So, but this show is kind of talking about the cultural things that happen, like Keith Woods' video on the Congress for Cultural Freedom, or of Cultural Freedom, one of the two. That is like the perfect Loud Sound Epicenter friendly video. It is talking about politics, but we're talking about the effects of all these people trying to be philosophers and theorists. So that's the thing. And probably said that in too many words, but anyways, to try and justify some of the show. And right on cue, we got Brandon in chat, which I'm happy to see. But anyway, how about that? Was that too much? It's all about trying to say that in the least amount of words. That's the obstacle. It's really difficult to say you're an art critic in a political movement because people accuse you of being a journalist, which is funny because it is kind of like authentic journalism, like one of the few areas of authentic journalism. Because if you're just looking at everybody doing their thing and you're not participating in it, that is allegedly what we want journalists to be, these kind of neutral observers. Not to say that like people should be the real liberals or that kind of thing, but it's just the idea that, if I say something positive about Bowden, that's some kind of endorsement. I think a lot of people from a political perspective in the dissident right would say that, yes, why not? Why not just say it's an endorsement? Because some of these people are, I don't want it to turn into this idolatry thing. That's the thing. It's really hard to tell who's engaging in idolatry because, I would like to think that most people are motivated for religious purposes. And so when they're talking about all these different writers and philosophers, that they're engaging with it in this like critical thinking, academic perspective. But I think I said on a previous stream, if everybody really was genuinely curious about history and politics, I would expect them to also get into theology and check out scholasticism and get into Thomism. But it seems like a lot of people get bored with religious texts. They're more interested in political, flashy, Jonathan Bowden, all this like pep rally talk. And we'll get into some of that in a sec here. I want to catch up with the chat. But there was some things in Tennessee that I thought were a little stale, a little 2017 tier. And that's why, I'm sorry to say it in so many words. That's why I feel compelled to do the show and to do Twitter Spaces, because in this political movement, it seems like the majority of contributions are political perspectives. And it's like people make fun of Curtis Yarvin for, acting like he got the skeleton key for finding Thomas Carlyle, but then everybody does the same thing for Spangler, for all the, they do that exact same thing for other things. Yo, is that Keith Woods in chat? Yo, let's go. Can we get some 07s for Keith Woods? This guy, I'm telling you, man, this is like, do you remember when Nick was like, what was the clip? Keith is like the ideal citizen. Like somebody who just like wanders around, engages in philosophy, but doesn't turn it into this theory cell pipeline. Like hopefully that's like what this show does, is it's kind of normalizing a less serious version of politics, because it seems like nobody understands how to, it's like, another thing I think was in the last stream, people want to either be political or they want to be social. They can never, most people seemingly can never do both. Either you're political and you're antisocial, or you're really social and you water down your views. And it's like, if all you use are political sources, you're only going to get people like Academic Agent. You're going to get people, doing the Athenian Stranger, Bookworm, Twitter Spaces. That's what it leads to. Or it leads to somebody like, Sovereign Bra. You get these like tough guys. You get this like jock mentality in the dissident right, who they're cultural because they work out and because not everything is from books, but it's this very like hyper aware, vanity driven persona, which is still political. You can say, you're going out and about and you're meeting lots of people, and so look at you, you're a socialite. But again, it still has a political foundation if you care about, the optics of, you perceive yourself to be somebody who's, an heir to all these dissident spaces. So that's kind of the difference there. I feel like a lot of the Zoomers, they're just on the timeline saying things off the top of their head. A lot of it is unfiltered, and there's like an immaturity with that, but it's also authentic. Everything from the political perspective is very much gone through the filter, and we have to make sure that this is safe for normies, and it's also true to the principles of this historical identity that I'm trying to develop. You need to develop your cultural identity. Everybody wants to develop the political philosophy that they like, and then they go into a space and they can't defend it because all of their references are the stuff that we're all sharing. And so that's the thing. Like when I go into a space and it's a bunch of millennials riffing, there is that tone of like, I'm not part, like I can never be part of that space because I'm a Zoomer. I can never be part of that space because I'm political. I've never really been part of a lot of the millennial factions on Twitter. And if I agree with them politically, that doesn't mean we're friends. That doesn't mean, this idea that the litmus test is like being based. We'll get into some of the stuff that happened in Tennessee. There were a few examples of that. But it's like, I think we're well done with developing the political identity. People have found it. They have found the banned books. Everybody's aware. This is not 2017. It's not like the new wave of radicalization that happened when everybody was first discovering things that were dissident. It's I don't want to be nostalgic for things like that. We're supposed to move forward, kind of like this futurist perspective. And what's going to make it authentic and, cool is not the fact that it's based. It's the fact that it's cool. Not the fact that it's smart. It's the fact that it's aesthetic. So that's what I've been trying to explain that in a short way in Twitter Spaces, and, just been sharing some ideas with, people like Hangland, people like Curious Gazelle. It's very difficult. I'm not trying to be a contrarian. I'm not trying to be Brandt, but it's like this trying to carve a space for the Zoomers to be less political. You're going to rub up against all these millennials that are super partisan, strident philosophers. And it's funny because people can make fun of it when it's Yarvin. Everybody knows it's try hard. Like there was that infamous story of the poetry he gave in like New York or somewhere, and it was like not really fitting the vibe based on reports. And people can make fun of that because it's kind of a dorky thing. It's not super meshed with everybody. But then when it's somebody like BAP, everybody like pulls their punches and says, whoa, 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 everybody wants to respect the elder statesman of the dissident right. Hey man, a lot of old heads go back years, and it's like everybody can just kind of hang around here casually and do their own thing. That's not political, and that's not because we want to be journalists. It's because we don't want to engage in politics. That's the limits of politics. But anyway, that was a little too rambly. Gotta hone that in for a later take. But I don't know. Is this even coming through clearly? Should we have just should we just wrap up the show? I mean, sometimes it feels like you shouldn't say anything because people are going to assume your bad faith at the outset. So, maybe we should just like throw in the towel. Maybe all these Nietzschean pessimists were right. You know what, man? Maybe we've been sidelined by politics. But anyway, I'm scrolling through chat here. We can start talking about Tennessee. How about that? Maybe it's time to. What was the event? Hey, thank you, Philip. Yeah, well, that's a nice transition. I don't think young dissident right should only relate to older dissidents. Literally, we need to create future culture. And again, I know this sounds like we're trying to start like an anarchist movement. We're trying to like, this is like Marxists on campus. They're trying to trying to be revolutionaries in the most inoffensive way. We got this little live stream going on here. Again, it's not to be try-hard. I'm not trying to be like a shot caller, but to try and justify some of the show, it was never just for political reasons. There's always this cultural dimension that gets neglected because a lot of Zoomers are not cultured, and a lot of the who said that? Let me put that chat in here. A lot of our examples are people older than us, and like I said with millennials and Twitter, we can never be them. We can never compete with them. We can share the same values, but we're not in that age group. So I don't want to LARP and be like, well, I'm going to be a part of this political faction that they're a part of, and that makes me a dissident right person on Twitter because I'm, why wouldn't I endorse Bowden when I agree with some of the philosophy? It's like we don't want to LARP as stuff that's already happened. That's the whole thing. That's the anti-political perspective, is it's cultural. We like some of the stuff, but that doesn't define our whole identity. So anyway, I just keep getting back into it. So we got to move on. We got to get into Tennessee. Most young people these days treat older people like they don't exist. That first change with millennials. Maybe. I don't know about that. I'd have to think on that. Yo, John shouting out some what was that guy? Damien Chazelle. Yeah, that's the thing. The Babylon movie, that's like the ultimate example because obviously I do not endorse hedonism. I don't endorse is that like a Gnostic view where you tolerate order and chaos and you try to find something in the middle? Like, I don't believe in that from a Christian perspective. It should be order getting rid of chaos and not this like blend, like these Greek concepts of Apollonian and Dionysian. Like, that's the thing. Like we kind of have fun with some of that language on Twitter, but at the end of the day, it's like, I probably wouldn't call myself a Platonist or like somebody that actually wants to adopt these kind of like Greek thoughts, maybe pre-modern thoughts, but not strictly Greek in that sense. It's but it's just hard to tell who's LARPing and who's actually taking it serious and who's joking, because everybody just kind of says those things And then I think if you got them in a political debate, they would actually start defending it and be like, well, that is part of my identity. That's what I've been saying all this time. And it's like, well, when I was saying it, I was trying to figure it out and understand it. But some people, they like latched on like that is the movement. Don't go too far. But anyways, that's the whole clarification is like a movie like Babylon. It's like, this is a movie. This is a tragic film. This is what's happening to these people is bad. You know, it's like, it's not cool to kind of like be dazzled by idols and then they have their fall from grace. Like that's, you know, it's not, we don't want to be beyond good and evil. We want to be good. That perspective. So anyways, mutants. Well, it's funny. Like, I mean, I assume you're joking, but like people who, you know, they like heavy metal for the transgression. It's like, no. Like I don't actually want to be a rebel in the like materialist sense of like, I don't want to like rage against my parents and spurg out, and I want to be an individualist. I want to be a libertarian because it's the least harmful thing against, you know, global liberalism. It's like, that's the thing. That's the trap. If you live fast, die young, you'll, you know, it's the biggest psyop, you know, to go back to Congress for Cultural Freedom. Like all that stuff is like, you're not supposed to like it and then take it in a right-wing direction. The whole thing is a psyop, you know. You can't challenge postmodernism with modernism. Like it's all part of the same logic. So yeah, like those Motorhead songs about like, what's the one he has about don't need no religion? It's like, some people will listen to that and take that as like a philosophical point. That's Nietzschean, right? And it's, you know, you end up like you're with people and you think you're on the same page, but then like they seem to have an attachment to these like symbols. And it's like, wait a second, we're just you know, we shouldn't assign a moral judgment on things that are, you know, strictly material. You know, I thought we were trying to get away from that. Yeah, loud sound. Yeah, yeah, disavow. Yeah, no loud sound anarchy. But all right. That went on for way too long. You guys got to cut me off. This is that was way fine. Yeah, thank you, May. Yeah, that's I don't know. I think a lot of lefties like, okay, now we got like a separate. Okay, but anyways, yeah. Let's start with Tennessee. That's the most 40 minutes into the show. We're gonna start the show. So in Tennessee, some a lot of interesting stuff. Obviously, last year went with Thomas, and there was some disagreement because there was an Estonian guy who said something about Ukraine. And it kind of outlined this division between this like pan-European, white identitarian nationalism. And then somebody like Thomas, who you would think would not really quibble about all the different distinctions there. But, you know, the thing about Thomas is I think he has that cultural thing to fall back on. You know, people probably look at him from the Pete Canona show, historian perspective, and so that's kind of his niche. But the thing that I liked about Thomas is, you know, he kind of reminded me of my dad, to be honest. Maybe I didn't think that directly, but the idea that, you know, he was interested in history, he was, you know, well versed, but then you could talk to him about heavy metal, and he was watching Headbangers Ball back in like the 90s, and so it wasn't just like you went up to him and you asked him all these red pill political takes. You could just hang out with him. And that's what was cool about Keith Woods. You know, you watch the content, you know, if you keep up with all the stuff, you know, I kind of want to reference one of like the main themes in this stream specifically is like that he had that thread on Karl Popper. You know, most people in the distant right want to talk about Marxism, cultural Marxism, the Frankfurt School. And Keith Woods seems to be interested ever since the Congress for Cultural Freedom. He's getting into some of these more like vague psyops, the people that like that right wingers can kind of latch on to, people from the BAP sphere kind of latch on to, you know, tolerating some degeneracy, You know, it's part of American culture to kind of have this like post Ellis Island jazz culture, Italian culture. And it's not strictly religious, it's like secular art. You have, you know, some people accuse Elvis of being in that category. And so it's very difficult, you know, the founding of Hollywood, the golden age of Hollywood, kind of having all these normalizations of different perspectives on race, perspectives on politics, like pop culture being this weapon against pre-modern views in the 20th century. And so after, you know, he talked about, you know, the CIA ops, people like Gloria Steinem doing that on, you know, in their own regard with feminism as an example. And that video I think is about a year old, but then more recently, maybe a month or two or so back, he did a thread on Twitter of Karl Popper and talked about, you know, if you want to understand things like modernity, people like Karl Popper who have this intellectual contribution to liberalism, science, and this kind of segues in with Robert Oppenheimer. You know, people, it's like a almost the perfect parallel, because you have like a Hollywood depiction of history, and maybe some people like the movie aesthetically, and there's people like the pacing and the drama within the film. But like you pull back and you realize like Christopher Nolan, you know, knowingly or unknowingly, is, you know, presenting this like psyoped version of American history. And, you know, he's making somebody like Karl Popper look cool. The idea that like somebody who's from a fringe, you know, philosophy corner, you know, rub shoulders with, you know, communists in America. And then he has this like American arc where he goes from being a nobody to a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And that's supposed to be quaint because, you know, look at this long road to fame for Oppenheimer. And then you have this dilemma of, is it right or wrong? But like everybody seems to be so dazzled by the story of a guy. And it's like people completely seem to sidestep like all the communism, the implications that it has on like wider philosophy, the idea that like physicians are clicked up, but like people respect them because people respect people like Einstein. You know, it's like everybody has this like cult reverence for science and modern liberalism because it meshes so well with American culture. And especially me being a Zoomer, it's hard to relate to anything outside of that because it's been generations of people that have also adopted it and said, it's not so bad. So you understand the levels of subversion that are at play with something like Oppenheimer, with things like Karl Popper. You know, everybody seems to be well aware of Karl Marx, the legacy of communism, you know, the barbarism of the Soviet Union, but nobody is like cultured enough to understand why someone like Popper would be more relevant. Why things like postmodernism, you know, like Jordan Peterson is also kind of a modernist, you know, and he is somebody who seems to, you know, like Nietzsche, not just as like as a thought experiment, but he actually agrees with him politically in his philosophy. And a lot of people in the distant right do the same thing. They critique postmodernism and all of its woes, and then they use political tools to try and dismantle things that, you know, would otherwise be on their side. So again, kind of a long-winded thing, but it's like, that's why you got to have art critics, people on the culture side of things, people who aren't trying to compete in the distant right politically, because you end up just kind of ginning up all this like political identity that's already being ginned up. So it's like, where's the real right? Where's authentic philosophy happening today? If it's everybody just talking about politics, you understand? So that was the thing. And I think that's why, you know, in the last year or so, that's when I've really tried to keep up with Keith Woods. And it just seemed like when I was trying to get out of politics, so was he. And again, I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but that's kind of like the untapped critique of, you know, the last 100 years. Everybody wants to critique how the politics of it are so bad. Don't you disagree with people like Betty Friedan and Steinem? in 2023, we have to remind people that that's not the end of the critique, you know. And there's even something kind of subversive about defending things like Barbie, defending things like Oppenheimer, and ignoring, yeah, it's a psyop, but come on, man, you get a lot of that. So, I mean, I guess I kind of already reviewed Oppenheimer accidentally. I was trying to get into the Tennessee trip, but it's like, yeah, politicized drama, like, no thanks. What's the Walter Benahim take? They need to politicize art because fascism has aestheticized politics. It's like, which side are you on? Do you really want to get into the dissident right because of politics? It looks like art is this hobby, but like, meanwhile, everybody wants to adopt European nationalism and impose it on the American right. Thomas had a post. I know he disavows the book, but the greatest post, which is on Skeptical Waves, there's a quote in there. You might want to look up what he says about the alt-right, because there's a take in there I think applies to the current dissident right. He was talking way back when about, you got all these people in the far right who they like people like Mussolini and all the European factions, in the 20th century, and they try to impose that on the American right. And it's like, you have to acknowledge that, white nationalism today cannot just be a rehash of what it was, because that's not how politics works. Like, I know Paul Godfrey makes a similar point in, or maybe that was Ernst Jünger, because I know he cites him in the fascism book. The idea that fascism could, by technical terms, could never come back because it was a very specific thing to the 20th century, and a lot of specific conditions have to be met before it can qualify under the definition, something to that effect. And a lot of people don't really take that lesson. Gottfried is trying to say there's things like generic fascism, and then there's other ideologies like Hitler and so forth that you would never define strictly with like a very harsh definition, because everybody does it a little bit different. And in my opinion, that's a cultural perspective. That's like a psychologist take on political theory. And people today, especially people my age, forget about people my age, like millennials don't really want to hear that, because they're competing for that cultural hegemony in the political context. They want to establish some of these ideas, but do you see how messy that is to try and like reassemble 20th century ideologies today? Again, people who seem to love Evola and Nietzsche, don't you understand, like, you are doing exactly what he said not to do in Twilight of the Idols? You're not supposed to become modernists, but just be based. So again, a little bit of not exactly like a groundbreaking take, but that's what's frustrating. And a lot of people don't clarify that. That's the thing. A lot of people, it's just kind of like a fun thing, and we're effectively doing a philosophy class on Twitter, and so people don't have to think too hard about it. And most people probably aren't actually believing in some of the stuff, so there may not be any harm being done intellectually. But when people talk about there's all these gaps in content, and maybe some of the streamers they watch get kind of old, it's because there's not somebody reinventing the form. To bring it back to Babylon and Brad Pitt's character, Jack Conrad, he's trying to like reinvent filmmaking, and he doesn't know exactly what he wants. He tells Diego in one scene, you look in Europe and they got Bauhaus, but then here in America, don't we have something better to offer an American audience? We got to inspire, we got to print yesterday's dreams into tomorrow. He does it in this very poetic language. And then when he latches onto sound, sound is going to be how filmmaking has changed. It's no longer silent films, it's the talkies. And so now the form has been reinvented in art. That's the kind of outsider dissident perspective, an actual dissident perspective. And everybody who's doing Evola contra Nietzsche, It's like, yeah, that was controversial back. It's like if you called yourself like a Randian libertarian today and you said, this is very groundbreaking. I'm being a daring libertarian, not like those other girls. It's like, yeah, it's you found something that was controversial decades ago. You know, it's like, what are we like? What are we supposed to do with that? So, anyways, so now we can start talking about Tennessee. Almost an hour into this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know, hey, look, it's been a long time since I've been behind the desk. So, hey, maybe we can just like hang out a little bit, okay? You want to tune in and watch a political take? That's kind of the antithesis of the rant. So, anyways, you want me to keep hitting the desk so you can audibly hear it? So, yeah. Sorry. It's just that's the thing. But anyways, yeah, we can start talking about Tennessee. Also, this is another clarification. This is another stream where I'm probably going to mispronounce names. So don't quote me on this. I'm a Zoomer and I'm not in politics like other people are. So maybe that's you guys can cut me some slack. But Ricardo Duchesne, Keith had him on his stream, and if you look his name up, he's been around the block. He's I should pull up. There's a review on the website. This was the first speaker, gave the first person who gave like a full speech. Where was it? He talked about like classical liberalism, and this is kind of an example. Again, I don't mean to be too harsh. I don't really have a dog in the fight. If people like him, they like him. I don't know too much about him. People should probably check out his appearance on Keith Woods' channel. But let me find. Oh my goodness, where's the review? Because this kind of meshes well with what we were talking about earlier. Where is it? Oh, can I let me go to my search. Oh, there it is. And I just want to read some of the stuff that was said about the speech. We're not going to go over every single speech. There's two examples. There's Ricardo Duchesne. I apologize if I'm not saying that right. And another guy whose name I definitely can't pronounce. So I'm just going to go over two of the speech. I'm not going to like read their full speeches. I'm not going to read the full review. But yo, Hanglin, what's going on, man? I just want to say some things about these two speeches, and then I want to talk about it a little bit since it harmonizes with what I said earlier. So Ricardo Duchesne, attacking the idea that cultural Marxism or another recent innovation is responsible for the decline of Western civilization. Instead, what we face is arguably the endpoint of civilization as liberal pluralism reaches its logical conclusion. And then let me see. Okay, Dr. Duchesne said John Rawls, Rawlsian liberal, Rawlsian liberalism, but John Rawls specifically, was the most influential political philosopher of modernity. And this kind of overlaps with what Keith was saying about Popper. Rather than anyone from the far more infamous Frankfurt School. So that's probably people like Adorno and Horkheimer. Rawls argued that the right of everyone to determine his own morality free of any collective standard is regarded as settled and unchallengeable by reasonable people. Liberal pluralism is thus the heart of modern Western morality. Any attempt to impose collective moral standards or to set a common purpose must therefore be suppressed to preserve individual freedom of consciousness. And the assumption that every person has the right and ability to make his own choices leads inexorably to egalitarianism and liberal immigration. And that was the other critique against Amran. Again, we can critique things without being too partisan. That's kind of the limits of the politics that get talked about in Amran and things like VDare, etc. Not only the conferences, the events, the sites, the people who look into the stuff like that. It's strictly political, and rarely, like maybe John Derbyshire does some pop culture stuff. That's one of the cool things about Steve Saylor is he kind of steps outside that spectrum, and he kind of does some more. In fact, I kind of want to pull up something he said about Obama and one of the members of the Runaways. This is just like random lore that he dug up, and I think it was in like Huffington Post. See, that's the kind of cultural literacy I want to see in like distant right spheres. People who are, it's not like random. I love this band, and so I'm going to talk about them. I love this band, and it kind of says something about, some figures, the state of things. Like there is like a connection there. That's not just a hobby. So that's the thing. And that's the thing, obviously VDare, their thing is immigration, and Amran gets a little more philosophical, but strictly from a political context, rarely do you see like anything cultural there. So again, that's just kind of the limits of philosophy in itself, and that's maybe why some people in the distant right get annoying. They have nowhere to go. They don't have like an arc where first they're talking about things like Marxism and subversion of Western civilization, and then they can talk about what? History, vague politics. It seems to be cyclical. So that's the thing about that's kind of just like the Zoomer critique of, why is this different from something like America First? Why is it different from some of the stuff you see on Twitter? Because it's just mostly a political movement, and maybe that's one of the big problems. So then what do we got here? Dr. Duchesne described modern Western history as one long story about the progressive elimination of restrictions and standards for voting and political participation. He argued that these ideas flow logically from the principles of John Locke and John Stuart Mill. And then is there anything else in here? That's probably the extent of it. But basically, and again, this is not like a massive critique against Duchesne, but a lot of this stuff just came across as like history class tier. And again, it is more philosophical than some of the other speeches. So I mean, I probably shouldn't critique the thing that is closest to something that I would like in my wheelhouse. But it is to say that because it is still rooted in historicism, and I think at one point he gave the definition of capitalism. It's like that kind of talk in 2023. Like you understand why this thing, like this is the natural end. He's talking about the natural ends of liberalism. This is the natural ends of politics. The fact that you have people rehashing John Locke and John Stuart Mills, how utilitarianism won the battle of philosophy before it turned into positivism and, looking at language. It's like, what are we really saying at the end of the day? We're trying to find what is the cause after all this time. It's like there seems to be a lack of a futurist perspective in a lot of this stuff. A lot of it is, and what a lot of this stuff inspires is younger people to sound like boomers. A young person will watch that speech, and this comes across as educational. It's like one of those sites, Ultimate Classic Rock or Loudwire. There was some like headline about, 80s rocker doesn't think that grunge destroyed glam metal. And he's talking about, it's like, why would that be relevant today? Is a person my age supposed to read that? And so you kind of have this constant anniversary posting in music news. You have a young person who may not know all the lore. We can push this out because it's relevant to them because they've never heard it, rather than like an older person. Is that the purpose of constantly rehashing politics in the cyclical way? Is there an end game in mind where a young person should constantly be thinking about classical liberalism and modernity, because those are like, that's the existential fight that right wingers are constantly going to have to remind themselves who they are. It's like confirmation bias on their identity. I don't know if that's why they're doing it. It comes across as that's all they know. That's what they know the most. And so they just keep talking about it. I think that's probably the reason why. Is there this like grandiose plan that, I know this sounds redundant and we did this last year, but this time the reason I'm doing it is because it's relevant? Or is it because if they had to talk about anything else, that's not really why they're in this thing. They're in this thing to kind of effectively wave around books. And it's this like Model UN fight every year. And it's like that thing we read in I Am 1776. That's not culture. That's not like slowing down progress, slowing down liberalism. Everybody's doing their thing, isolated, away from everything. And because they won an argument 5 miles away from power, you and your friends like got into an argument in your backyard and you won. And so that is a victory because I didn't lose that argument way off in the middle of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? And that's framed as like a victory. We're not like all those liberals competing for power in the spaces where it matters. And we're not talking about pop culture because it's a hobby, because you want to be a journalist. The sophisticated elder statesmen of the dissident right. We're going to argue with ourselves privately, because going out in public is sketchy and we wouldn't want to get arrested. We're going to do our own thing away from anything useful. And hopefully nobody calls us feds, because when you do things publicly, it could look a certain way. So let's just do everything. Keep it online. Don't leave the house. Stand up straight. Like that's my contention with, being a part of a political movement, being a part of a faction that's mostly online. It minimizes the discourse, and my cultural identity can't develop in that environment. If anything, it's like junk food going into a space, and we're going to talk about, Sargon is getting more based. The Lotus Eaters have a high production show, and that's a model for what other people in the dissident right should do. What we need in 2023 is younger people to do political commentary shows. And again, people might say that's what I do, but this show is cultural. So like, that's the thing. That's the difference. It's, there's a better way to do politics. There's a better way to do philosophy. That's the whole thing about Nietzsche when he's critiquing like Western thought and Socrates. It got too rational, and it minimized this like Greek style romanticism. And again, that doesn't mean you have to be a pagan, you have to be a Nietzschean. Understand what it is, and then don't do the exact thing he's telling you not to do. Like what? And it's like, no, but we're talking about the important concepts, and so it's kind of based. All right. You see what I'm saying? Like that's the cycle of the dissident right. Don't do anything, stay political, and don't worry about it. That's the thing. And then criticize everybody that's doing something. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit, it's a little personal when I say, like, I wish people would do stuff, because it's fun and you get to see your Twitter friends IRL. Maybe this is a boomer take, but maybe it was better like when Mark Zuckerberg was doing Facebook, and it was like, at first you had to be at the college and you had to know them in real life. So then you would go offline, and the social part of the social network was that you would get offline. And it's like today, everything is online and it stays online, and people who go out in public are criticized because it could look a certain way, and we could never know what's going on in a person's mind. So there's always that reasonable doubt. There could be circumstantial evidence, because anything that could possibly go wrong might go wrong. And this is just a captured mentality. This is political thinking. That is, rational to think that. it's rational to not tie yourself to a movement because it might get bad. That's, you know, that's where we're at with censorship, and people aren't who they say they are. We don't live in a high trust society. You know, those things are all logically true. But if you had some cultural imagination and you didn't worry about it so much, or you just went for it in an optical way, you could have an authentic right-wing representation outside of the internet. And when those things happen, people criticize. So it's like, okay, so there it is. There's the limits of politics. So anyways, people understand this. Again, I just want to, those are some of the things I've been like, you know, what's been happening these past 2 months, that's part of it. You know, it's, you see things, you see arcs, and it's like, there should be a better way to do it. There should be more respect for Zoomers. There should be a more leeway given to people that are not strictly political. That's where all the imagination and the true dissident thinking comes from that. So anyways, that's the Dr. Duchesne. I mean, again, it's not a big deal, but like that, like for him, because he's an older guy, it's kind of not a big deal because that kind of fits the profile. People that are older should probably be interested in the history of that stuff. And you know, Rawls had, what was it, some connection to the Clinton administration, so he kind of lived through that era. So, you know, it has some relevancy to that age group. But for people like us, you know, multiple things can be true at the same time. Like, people can be super political, and that's happening at the same time as people are developing their cultural identity. And people are organizing in real space. They're not doing rallies. I'm not talking about like 2017 era banner drops and marches like this. Again, this 20th century version of radical politics. Like, we're done with that. There's a better way to do that. You know, the things changed after that. We're in the post-internet era, you know? So, but like for somebody my age, like that speech doesn't seem to really be for people like me. So that's the only critique. And then I don't even know how to say this next person's name. So I'm just gonna, you guys probably know this person. Again, like I haven't even kept up with people like RFK in the American sphere. So you can imagine I'm not exactly up to par with all the nationalists that are talking about more radical things in their own countries. But this person gave a speech. Can I? Is there a better way to? I'll just share this because I don't want to mispronounce the name, so I'll just share it. Hey, photosynthetic Z. It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that. That's a nice segue to what we'll do after this. Here we go. So I saw this person speak. And again, it's like, it's not a big deal. I don't like, this person isn't my enemy because I was not fully feeling it. But, you know, this was kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. You know, the first speech was very historical based. We're rehashing classical liberalism, and you know, it's more of a political theory take. You know, this is like what Academic Agent does. And again, I just like Academic Agent's content for me just doesn't pack a punch. You know, it's kind of like you know, like I've expired outside of that genre. This person, on the other hand, I think this guy's from Belgium, and he used to be in like the Parliament or something. So, anyways, you guys probably know who this is. I just wanted a frame of reference because I didn't want to mispronounce the name. But this person gave a speech, and it was the opposite of Dr. Duchesne because it was effectively a pep rally. And so this is the other thing that kind of irks me with some of the stuff I see on the distant right. You know, people post their quotes, and it's like this feel-good self-help book type stuff. You know, people need to feel confident. You know, I understand, you know, it can kind of sound like a pep rally and it's over dramatic, but you know, the current state of the world, things really are in decline, or we're in a state of decline, and so it warrants that kind of those kinds of patterns from 20th century radical politics. But it just came across as like he was like listing off all of the phrases, like, I mean, I don't know if he said these things specifically, but it was things like the West has fallen, be the best version of yourself, be a go-getter, don't sit down, stand up, not like literally things like that, but it very like things you've heard before, I'm sure. And again, like gosh, how do I say this? Like, I'm very happy by myself. I'm very happy. Like, I don't need to, like, this might sound contradictory, but like, I don't need to go out and about to have fun. Like, I don't need to drink. I don't need to like have everybody else be drinking around me to feel like I'm having a good time. Like, I'm very happy by myself, and maybe that's a Zoomer trait. There's some flaws with that. It makes you antisocial. It makes you not want to go out. But it's like I'm happy being by myself, and I don't need to like, I don't need to lean on people to feel something. You know what I mean? I am very social, and I do think we should be out and about more often. But I feel like the kinds of, it's like what people say about Jordan Peterson, like, this is very obvious stuff, but it appeals to people because, maybe they don't, have a lot of friends. And so it hits different for someone like that because you don't have more context. But like, Zoomers should just feel content being Zoomers. They don't have to become millennials. They don't have to talk like boomers, like Dr. Duchesne. Like, you are an identity. You have your own heritage. And when people just start LARPing and they start like rah, rah, rah at some of these like speakers, to me, that's like the opposite end of the problem, where people are not confident in their own personhood. That like that speech just like was like inappropriate, in my life, because I've already gone through this cycle. And again, if the purpose of the first speech is because there's constantly going to be newcomers here, it makes sense. You have a function for having the same repetitive stuff. But I think for most people, this is just like what they know. And it should be a lot bigger, given that radical politics has evolved after the 20th century. That's kind of a point that Thomas was talking about in The Greatest Posts. And a lot of people, it's funny, like, he's the guy that people like because he's very like visible with his uniform. But he's the guy telling people, don't LARP. Don't just adopt 20th century radical politics. You cannot impose Europe onto America. Like, he's the guy saying that. And so it should hold some weight because, people might accuse him of, oh, you're just wearing the leather jacket and the symbols, but then you tell people, to do it a different way. It's like, yeah. One thing Thomas recently went to New York, and he was talking about how effectively the avant-garde scene is right-wing. And he was talking about it seemed like he met a bunch of people who were artsy types, but they were friendly to dissident politics. And he said, like, yeah, liberalism is not fun anymore. This kind of like tired 2017 talking point of, the left is no fun. They used to be the counterculture. Now they're the establishment. But, that sentiment overlaps with people who think they're doing something cool by just being flashy with far right politics. Like, that's not the full capacity of being dissident. There's all these cultural elements. People should be writers. People should be getting into the art world and not just like adopting all the postmodernism stuff. They should also be like finding out what is like non-subversive art to make. What are some of the hurdles in college? And then how can you be a good representation in a class without being like a caricature? You know what I mean? Not saying you should like get into arguments with people publicly and like, cause a fuss. It's just like, the most radical thing you can do is be normal. Just like be yourself and not be a theory cell and not like signal to other people. But it seems like that's like the majority of the things in the sphere, politics and signaling. And it's like, I just want to like go somewhere. I want to like see a concert, and I just want to like hang out with my friends. But for other people, they're doing a bit or they're a comedian, and I'm doing like a radio show in front of everybody. It's like a performance art. And so you can't say it's not pop cultural because that's not very political, but it's still like, again, the foundation is I'm signaling to other people I care about what other people think. That's still like rational thinking. That's why I keep going back to the rational thing. Like, yes, what you're doing logically makes sense and people on the right can agree with you, but this is, we're past, we should be past all that. So anyways, those are like the two speeches that stood out as far as like stuff to talk about. But yeah, and something that Keith Woods mentioned was, he was talking about like, is kind of talking about that, like people are intellectually signaling to one another about this and that, but like really, people, in order to talk about the full scale of the subversion, you would have to talk about postmodernism and modernism, and a lot of the right is kind of their identity is wrapped up in a lot of the things that prevent it from growing teeth, so to speak. So his speech was different, but I'm trying to apply that to mesh it with a lot of the other talking points. It's like that's the thing. The intellectual stuff has its limitations. Philosophy has its limitations. It's like that's when I was talking in the last stream about like some people are hippies in the sense that like they're actually just degenerates. You may see some people on Twitter that fit a certain like degenerate profile. And a lot of these people are just like effectively liberals because they're not actually engaging in politics. And then the ones that do engage in politics don't have that cultural literacy to not be cringe, to not be super millennial. And so they end up invariably just fighting with people because it's either be political or don't do anything, it seems. But anyway, enough with saying the same stuff over and over again. What else happened at AmRen? The other thing too, to wrap it up, Keith made a point about like if you try to read the human biodiversity stuff, just because it's right wing, that doesn't make it any less hard to read. I think I may have said this in a previous space. Like they talk like biology teachers. Everybody in Tennessee, or the people at Tennessee, seem to kind of have this like they feel like they're the real scientists because whereas this specific genre got gatekept, they actually do want to be like the scientists that should be getting their credit the way that Einstein and Oppenheimer does. And it's like, to me, like no, like I don't want to be like a physicist. I don't want to do like liberalism properly, or like I actually do want to get with all the smart people and kind of like find my place in it. My thing was always more cultural, and so those genres are still political. You know what I mean? It's still under that umbrella of people that want to be philosophers and so on. So again, same thing. It's you think you're rivaling modernity, that is still modern thinking. That is still rational. So that's the thing. You should actually be pre-modern. You should not be of the material world. So anyways, that's I remember Keith said that. And then what else does anybody want to know about what happened in Tennessee? It was me, Thomas, bass guitarist was there. It's always just cool to see my Twitter friends. That's the thing. And that's the thing. That was another vibe. It's like I need to learn how to like relax when I'm at these things because I get ready to go there, and it's like sometimes I forget to have fun. I catch myself like I my guard's not fully down, and it should be because we're here at the event. People should focus when they're in school. People should focus when they're driving. But when you're with your friends, no debate, no like showing off, no signaling. It's time to just be yourself. But again, people develop their political identity, and it meshes with their social skills, and so it kind of becomes like a full philosophy. These aren't just my opinions. This is how I conduct myself. You know, I'm like, I'm a living manifestation of the ideas. And it's just like, that's cringe. You know, let's just hang out. But anyways, there might not even be enough right-wing IRL events happening to even make that critique, because, you know, we usually don't even see events being put together. So, you know, that's the thing. There's some like underdeveloped things, because most of this is a political movement. But anyway, yes, May was there. May was there, of course. Howard on Twitter was there. It's cool to put a face to a name. You know, it feels like real. It feels like I'm not just arguing with myself in these Twitter spaces. So yeah, and that's the other thing with this show. This show is like a Twitter space show. You know, we talk about Twitter happenings, and but instead we have a webcam, and you know, we can add some context too. There's also a chat. You know, most people are just listeners, it seems. And so rather than call-ins, you know, there's some interaction here. So that's the thing. This really is like the Twitter show on YouTube. So that's another way to frame this thing, like using Twitter as like an adjective to say, you know, yes, we do pop culture, and we also do politics and philosophy, but we just don't do it in this like boomer way. Yeah, thank you, Mute, and thank you, May. But yeah. But yeah, Tennessee was fun. Of course, Thomas and Keith did some content, and I don't think that's launched just yet, so that'll be interesting to see. Well, I guess I already saw it. I guess I saw most of it, so that's kind of ironic. But yeah, no, that was cool. That was cool content, you know. And again, it's like it didn't seem like there was any ego. You know, there was no like, we don't have to like rehash drama, you know, among each other. You know, it's just like, it's like you've always been friends kind of a thing. And it's like, maybe in high school, people remember when like they didn't get along with certain people, and maybe it was them, maybe there was showboating, you know, that rational side of things. People are trying to like signal. And so they walk in at the worst moment and they get a bad first impression. You know, maybe that's the reason. But sometimes it does seem like certain people are just in the wrong space. It seems like that's another dilemma. So, yeah, I kind of want to. Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. I'm seeing some stuff on in Twitter. But yeah. What else? What else happened? What else happened in Tennessee? It was just cool. It's almost like the less happens, that's like a better review, because, you know, if you really want to like review every single speech, it's like that's not. And that was the thing. It seemed like this year we didn't even like. It's almost like the speeches weren't even a priority this year, and I'm saying that as a compliment. You know, we were so happy with our group, we could just kind of do that. Since we got some people in here, I don't know how many. You know, nobody docks, of course, but if you guys are on Twitter, first of all, if you're on Twitter, this show effectively happens on Twitter. People are talking about ace spaces in the chat, but really there is. If you're not on Twitter, people should tune in. And again, if any like events are happening, oh gosh, I put my home. Excuse me. Sorry about that. To stay tuned with the show. Yo, Jackson here. To stay tuned with the show, because I need to bother some people near the LA area, because I'm just curious if people are going to be in town next month, because there's this thing happening again. People might accuse me of certain things. If I show up at certain events, it's almost like an implicit endorsement because I'm there. It's like interesting enough to pique my interest. But I just want to clarify, there's not a lot of events that happen outside of America First. And so when something happens near me, I want to put this on the screen here, just in case there's anybody nearby who might be interested. Let me find where was this thing? Where was this thing? I'm trying to I wanna rally some troops if I can. That's the thing. This is not a massive show, but gosh, I'm gonna have to go to Grimes's Twitter, aren't I? I was just curious who would show up at a thing like this. That's all. Nothing. We don't have to speculate too much, but oh goodness, does she post like a bunch of stuff? Okay. Yeah, I just want to put this on the screen in case anybody missed this. I'm just curious who would show up at a thing like this, just in case there's anybody here. If anybody's on the West Coast, it'd be cool to kind of have like a Tennessee vibe at this thing. That's the thing. I like the IRL events. But yes, this is the event. I understand it's a very controversial thing. Not the question on the poster, or the post rather, but just the fact that you have certain characters here, it might attract some non-right wing attention. I'm just curious who would show up at a thing like this. Again, I'm on the West Coast. It seems like everything happens on the East, and so something happens in my neck of the woods. I'm just curious who would show up. So I got to bother one person specifically, but if there's other people in the area, I'm just curious. Reach out on Twitter. I'm just curious would anybody be interested in something like this? So I know in the last show we talked about people like Mary Harrington, Louise Perry. So it's funny. It's like in one of the college speeches I gave last year, Louise Perry was cited, and there was kind of this like interesting, trying to check out, what's going on with all these modern feminists, these like first waiver types. We were kind of trying to look at some of that stuff while we were talking about like postmodernism and the kind of changing politics in the 20th century. And so people like that seem to like be getting a lot of promotion last year, and now they're kind of doing these IRL events. And so it's just an interesting arc. It's not an endorsement. It's not okay. We don't actually want to be feminists. I'm just saying it's interesting to see what people are doing, and because most people in the dissident right seemingly don't leave their house, it would be an interesting thing. So just curious. I wanted to announce that. That was the announcement I referred to earlier. I was just curious, but okay, photosynthetic. I understand. Not everybody's a big fan, but hey, Vingle's here. Vingle, it's been so long. I think I don't know if I've told you this yet because it's been a while, but I was watching some of the Straight Story. So I know you were asking me about that probably months ago now, but I did watch that. I watched, I was going through it, and I don't remember if we ever talked about it or if I ever announced it on the show. So sorry to wait so long, but yeah, the Straight Story, David Lynch. It's like I think he did that through Disney, and it was one of his more accessible films because it was kind of like a family story, and that was nice. Maybe that's what should be the standard for films today. People like this this like high-minded Oppenheimer, or they like flashy things like Barbie. Maybe the standard was always the Straight Story. Maybe because I'm trying to make sense of the stuff that I talk about, and I don't want to assign, I don't want to put a moral assignment on it, because then it looks like I'm like a modernist. It looks like I'm doing the Jordan Peterson thing, and I don't want to fall into that habit. I don't want to like fall in love with the very thing that I critique in other contexts. So the Straight Story, that was just like a nice movie. There was nothing subversive in there. That's like family friendly, and it's just like a feel good movie. So just some of it though. No. I got to the end of it. Sorry about that. I didn't clarify that quite well. Yeah, I got to the end of it, but I didn't remember if if I said that already, if that was like redundant. But yeah, you know, it's funny. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is kind of like a film that people don't seem to like understand how to make sense of. And I think just the more I think about it, things like that, and I saw that movie in theaters. That was like 2019. Things like that, I think, are closer to me, and maybe that's more of a Zoomer attraction. The fact that it's not hyper political, and you don't have social engineering, of course. Again, not that we're like, not that we're like completely like we've never seen stuff like that before, but the idea that like what is the appropriate way to do stuff like that, because we critique things like people like Taxi Driver, even though it's like this nihilist type movie. But if there's nihilism in things like Barbie, that's I'm just trying to like, where's the line? Where's we say we don't like modernity, but everything, we all of our movies, all the music, all the hobbies are seem to be modern. And so is that a surrender? Is that contradictory? Or is it a hobby, meaning that, we would never say that's like part of our identity, because then that would be like idolatry. That would be modernism. I just don't know where the line is with stuff like that, because it seemed like the Oppenheimer and Barbie created this discourse, and it kind of brought it to the forefront, because we defend certain films and we say, don't worry about it. But then, I don't see a lot of consistency, and because the right doesn't have a lot of cultural literacy. So that's the thing. I think like the safe standard is things like The Straight Story. So that was one of the benefits of seeing it was, here's just a normal movie where there's just normal characters. And you could probably say something similar to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And maybe that's why that stood out to me in 2019, because at the time I was very political and I wouldn't know how to explain a lot of these, art critic type takes. I don't think I was in that perspective quite yet. And so to see something like that, it was refreshing. Why was it refreshing? It was like what Brad Pitt said about reinventing the form. Something like that stands out, because what we're used to is the Ryan Gosling movies. And, that's the thing. It's like, it seems like under that logic, things like the Ryan Gosling movies would also be, it's kind of just doom and gloom, in a negative sense. It seems like the right thing to do is to counter signal things like that. You know what I mean? Again, not to turn it into like this try hard thing. Again, I know we're already getting there. Maybe we're already there, but I'm just saying I don't think we clarify. People unironically like nihilist stuff. People unironically like things that are kind of counterintuitive to their views. And so I'm just trying to figure out what exactly we're doing, because I think there were some lessons learned from Oppenheimer and Barbie. Maybe we can get into that in a second. I want to see if there's anything else in chat that I may have missed. Yeah, that's funny, because I was talking with my dad, I think earlier this week or maybe last week. Yeah, it's like things like Tarantino don't really look as cool after you kind of like figure out what it is. Things like Christopher Nolan, there may be some limitations there. I haven't rewatched Interstellar, but I heard Gio talking about it, and he was saying, it's this anti-metaphysical film. And when I saw the movie, I mean, I don't think that was anywhere near my wheelhouse. So it would be interesting, going back, after watching some Keith Woods videos, it might be interesting to go back and kind of, because that's kind of what I was saying earlier with heavy metal. Like, people don't develop their own identity, and then they get into politics or they get into pop culture, and they start like minimizing a lot of the cringe things in these movements. It's actually based to not care about the consistency with the culture and the politics. And I just want to organize it a bit better, because I don't want to defend things that are indefensible. I don't want to, I don't want to like give the wrong impression. And so I don't know. Does Interstellar make a point? Like, Gio was making this point about like, there is kind of this like science man based perspective in a lot of as a theme in Christopher Nolan movies. And when I saw these things, back then, I didn't have this like philosophical perspective. So it might be a good thing to kind of expose some of the limitations with a lot of these quote unquote, newer, cooler filmmakers, because I just think it's hard to step outside of it. But maybe if we understand what it is, then it becomes less cool, and it's kind of easier to be ourselves and to not latch on to certain things. So that's the thing. It's just like that's to go back to what I said at the beginning. If I say something about a movie, that doesn't mean I think everybody should go out and watch it. And I want to shill for this filmmaker. This filmmaker's the future of the right. I'm not trying to like imply things like that. The idea that people like me are like, influencers, like, movement leaders, I don't think most people are under that impression, but it's just to like organize the discourse a little bit better. Cause that's the thing. I'm curious where, I'm just kind of curious, what is the appropriate way to do the pop culture criticism, without falling into the same bad habits as, the people trying to be philosophers. And, I don't want it to turn into like a Curtis Yarvin type thing. I don't want to redo the BAP thing, but more Zoomer friendly. Like I want to do something that's just kind of like a Zoomer thing. And I don't think people know exactly what that is, but what's going on here? All right. Just wanted to clarify something. Let's see here. What do we got here? Glad you watched Straight Story. So wholesome. Yeah, that's the thing. It's a wholesome. The other thing too, I watched a little bit of, I was rewatching some of Inland Empire. I was curious if anybody here saw that, because I'm in the middle of writing an article on it for the site, and I'm just trying to pick the angle. That's the other thing here. Okay, I want to be transparent. Like, I'm just trying to like make the most honest account of stuff like that, but it's so difficult because a lot of it is inaccessible to mainstream people, and it's difficult to communicate like some of these more esoteric things in an article. It might be easier to talk about this thing physically than to write about it. So I was curious if anybody saw it, because it kind of goes hand in hand with what I was talking about earlier. When we're talking about pop culture, it's not an endorsement on modernity and degeneracy, and we're not trying to make like a right-wing validation of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. We're trying to just like make an account of it, and that's where we're kind of like journalists rather than political pundits. So I know like Catherine D gets into that kind of gray area where you talk about a lot of things, but you don't really put your take out, and that's perceived as suspect because it's a different type of thing that's being done. You understand? But again, we're used to people just being political, and that's why I think people are hostile to people like Catherine D and some of these other people outside the BAP sphere. It's like everybody's a suspect online. Everybody's a possible Fed, and so people don't do anything. But anyway, I don't even know. Alan Wilhelm. Yeah, today we don't have. Thomas is not here on the stream today. Jack Scorsese. Interesting. But yeah. And I know Inland Empire is also like one of the less accessible ones, so that's what makes it difficult to say. Like, the reviewer seems to not even know the full score, so how could you even write about it? It's difficult. And maybe you could apply that to the dissident right. You don't know what everybody's up to. And so it's just very awkward to talk about it because you don't want to like misrepresent things, but maybe some people don't represent themselves, coherently. And so it's just like widespread confusion. Like the whole movement is just It's like a hall of mirrors, a movie within a movie. And that's the thing, like, it seems like Inland Empire would fall under the same category as a lot of like the postmodern art, which is subversive in the fact that it's trying to subvert grand narratives. It's trying to like, it's basically this like Richard Rorty philosophy on display. This is like artistic, like what the Italians did with futurism. They're trying to like, they're like materialist progressives. And it's like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be like a materialist. I just want to like step outside the like conventional political spectrum to do an apologia for like Christian values, pre-modern ethics. Like that's what I'm trying to do. And if you talk about like when you're in the art world, it looks like you're one of them. It doesn't look like you're subverting. It looks like you're normalizing. You're doing it on their terms. So I'm just trying to like be careful with that. And I'm trying to be transparent while I'm doing it. So like that's the whole thing is everybody's nervous about where people are coming from, but I just want to say it. This is what I have in mind with this show and what I do on Twitter. That's my concern. So yeah. So I guess Oppenheimer. Seems like the second time I watched it, that's when I started to become the most critical of it, because the second half just becomes obviously political. Not even in like in a historical way where like, wow, this is interesting. The government is twisting his arm. That's interesting. It seems like there's this very partisan angle. And so it seems to overlap with Barbie, as in like trying to have a message that's strident. And the way people talk about Christopher Nolan is like he's like too smart for politics, but he seems to be engaging in the same linear thinking that Barbie is, except instead of condemning the patriarchy, he's condemning, why can't the American government professionally handle people that are outside, the typical physicist genre. Like the thing is, it's like the Oppenheimer's arc could overlap with like Adorno and Horkheimer. Like he has like a Frankfurt School type arc where he's like a third culture kid. He seems to see an alliance with, physicists. There's also like Oppenheimer. There's a certain, maybe there's a certain reason why he's sympathetic to communism. And of course, all of the World War II implications. Like that's for starters. But like the thing about Oppenheimer, just like as a movie, is like the last half of the movie is very just kind of stale, as far as like you're trying to make this political point about. It seems to be like you're trying to paint the American government as not being, as like they're being too unprofessional with communists in America. It's like it seems like there would have been a better story to tell with other people from that same era. But and the beginning half, as a philosophy major, it might look amusing to see like a student trying to rethink physics in the same way that Nietzsche rethought philosophy. In the 19th century, you have people trying to deal with, they're in this climate that's different from, the ancient world. And so it looks like this is like an underdog story, but really it's like, it seems like he's on the wrong team. So it's like the story seems to be social engineering if the person in question, has this type of baggage. So, you know what I mean? The first half does seem to be less explicit as far as the propaganda. But I mean, when you look at the final product, it really is like boomer truth. So, you know, and the idea that Christopher Nolan like seems to have a lot of things at his disposal, like for this to be interesting to him, it's kind of like the Ricardo Duchesne, like you have like you know, you have the floor, tell an interesting story, and it's like this is the thing that you thought was like cool. You know, we should have a bigger imagination. People like Oppenheimer. So it is funny. You saw people like Josh Peck. You saw some like younger, newer-ish actors, Devin Bostic from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So it is that's interesting. Um, but yeah, it's funny. It's like without that that political perspective, that's where the political perspective can help kind of see the decoration that's being displayed with Oppenheimer. You know, people might be under the impression he's just a scientist or he's just trying, you know, to figure things out. And it's like he's clicked up with all these physicists that like see themselves as like a, you know, they see themselves separate from other people, it seems. And, you know, you can fill in the gaps there. So I don't know. It's like we're supposed to, seems like we're supposed to relate to like people who are completely outside of our character. So like what, it doesn't seem like a very American film just because these people are doing all of this sketchy stuff on American soil. Like that's like the opposite of the straight story where you have average people doing average things. The tractor thing is obviously kind of unconventional, but you know, you have an average middle American people just doing their thing and then it gets resolved at the end. That's an American tale. That's an American Odyssey. This is like, and it's like there's almost something kind of, there's something odd about like this is a very inaccessible movie to a lot of people. Like most people are not interested in philosophy. The fact that this did as well as it did commercially, that's strange. Like this doesn't fit the climate. Like as if people are like really itching to go see like how physics got expanded in the 20th century. It's just very sus. You know what I mean? And then of course you throw in the communists involved and it's like, what? You're this American story where like the communists are supposed to be sympathetic and like and it's like the pacing of the movie is like very strange. It's like disorienting. And okay, was it just me? Was the music like really loud? You know, I thought like I wasn't paying attention enough because I was getting lost in the imagery, but the music was like very overt and I like they have to remind you that this is not a boring scene. Like, you know, a commercial audience might not want to sit through. Well, then why not just pick a different story if it's just so hard to do that? You know what I mean? So I don't know. It kind of the movie just kind of gave me a bad impression, honestly. You know, maybe it would be easier, like in a college setting, to cite this movie to talk about like here's how radical ideas become mainstream. This physicist who was a student was able to mainstream his ideas, kind of like Keith in the Congress for Cultural Freedom. Like these people are effectively activists. They're effectively like changing our perception of what is possible. And that's dangerous. Like these people are, you know, there's subversive people in America that are a part of this culture changing tech. You know, that I think in the last stream we mentioned like things like the contraception pill. That's culture changing tech. Imagine if we just didn't have contraception. You know, that might solve some problems. You know, the atom. It's well, Peter Thiel I think actually cited the atom bomb. The atom bomb and contraception were two culture changing techs in the 20th century. And it's like, you know, that is like concerning. You know, forget about making like a moral judgment on these individual people. Like our world changed so rapidly, very quickly. Like that should be something that people are concerned about. And we're like some people seem to be like reveling in the drama of like him and the communist woman that he slept with. And it's like, what is American about this plot? These people are like the antithesis of American culture. Like, this is what American culture came, radical politics, esoteric, topics, expanding tech. This is like the anti-American film. This is what America became. And that's tragic. You know what I mean? But it's like people seem to like all of these individual characters as if they're anywhere near us. Like even people like Strauss, who might have had, who might have just been trying to contain, the communism domestically. But like, just again, it's like that's still political. Like these people are like political, people doing all of this stuff that's like far away from your average American watching the film. You know what I'm saying? There is something sus. But anyway, I'm not saying like every movie has to be like at our level, but it's just like it's just odd, I feel like a lot of stuff is just being imposed on us. Obviously, there's the post-war consensus. There's all the, stuff about, people are less hesitant to drop a bomb on Germany than other people. You got all these like political takes about that, but I'm just talking about like the whole, like it's an esoteric topic. The people involved are not like us, most of us. It's like, and this is supposed to be like the American blockbuster of the year. You know what I mean? Like it's like implying that there's something in our identity that overlaps with it. It's like, so that's the thing. Like maybe Christopher Nolan is kind of not really like gelling well with me in the grand scheme of things. All right. What about whoops. Anyways, I guess Barbie. I guess I haven't talked about Barbie. Oh man, what is there to say? It's like, okay. Well, I don't know. Let me see what you guys are saying. I don't know. Is it just me? That's the thing. It's like, do you see how like Oppenheimer, Inland Empire, like even if we like David Lynch and even if Christopher Nolan is a talented filmmaker, like, do you see how all of this energy is being channeled in like very forced directions? Very. It seems like very unnatural. The Straight Story was based on a true story too. Oh, really? Anyways, am I making Oppenheimer a victim of Red Scare politics is kind of silly, but that is what the public will take away from it for sure. Yeah, that's the other thing. Did people keep up with the movie? Because, like, I had to watch it twice just to even grasp most of it. But I do feel like I got like I feel like I got the takeaway. Tarkovsky is right up there as my favorite along. Oh, Vingel, if you're still here, yeah, I need some help. I need some help with what are David Lynch's people? What was I gotta go to let me where is it? Reception. I need some help with some of these European directors. I maybe that's the missing link I'm having. Like I haven't seen Persona all the way through. Um, Godard and Fellini. I haven't seen that stuff. So you might have to help me out. You might have to recommend me some stuff, or reach out on Twitter, because I'm going to need some help with this article. I need some help understanding Inland Empire, because obviously he's trying to do the Sunset Boulevard type story, but do it in kind of this postmodern way. But I want to make sure I have all the context, because I don't want to lie about the movie, and I don't want to. I know, of course, David Lynch is inspired by all those culture changing, artsy directors. Bergman, that's the other one too. Bergman, yeah, yeah. No, just all those people I listed. I'm just curious what you think of them, because I need some help. But thank you, Vindigal. I know you're you got citations. So how was Barbie such a big thing? Yo, Richard Crook, good to see you here, man. Was Barbie such a big thing? It's a movie about a toy. Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? Kurosawa. Yeah, well, that's kind of the thing. And I thought Nick, I don't know if you guys saw Nick's take, but I honestly, that's kind of relevant to. I can link that in chat. What would I type? Fuentes Barbie. Yeah, it's like that, and it's funny because he mentions like, oh gosh, can I get a shorter version of the? Yeah, here we go. I would encourage people to check this out, because I think I'm struggling to explain like the show. Seems like the majority of the show is talking about the show, but again, just like that I am 1776 thing we read, and this clip that I'm putting in chat, like this is what I'm trying to articulate, this art critic perspective. And when I talk about certain things, it sounds like I like them. It sounds like I'm endorsing them, and I'm making some kind of partisan take on it. And obviously there's a political thing happening there, and I'm trying to just talk about it first and foremost. And then maybe that's what I should start with. I'm talking about it. And then yeah, it's just there's something subversive happening in all these things, that even some of the people in our spheres like. So yeah, that's the thing. It's like I don't like I said a while ago, like it seems like Brandt's take was vindicated. Like both of these summer films that people were hyped up about, at the end of the day, it's like, honestly, this is all just a distraction. This is all just kind of a waste of time from other stuff. I know that's kind of like a boring take, but because the thing that Nick said was, it's a weird movie. And then you get all the surface stuff. It's a toy, but then they make it bigger than it is, and it's ironic because most young people there's probably like a historic drop from people playing with Barbies, and there's more like the iPad generation. There's more people on screens and video games. But beyond that, the idea that the style of this film, this is what I'm getting at with Oppenheimer, and this is where I'm suspect with Lynch, because even some of Lynch's stuff qualifies under this rubric. I like David Lynch, but like maybe maybe he's interested in some sussy things, when he's trying to things in Twin Peaks. Like there's even some like sussy things in Twin Peaks. Like what is he saying about, all of these characters? Like who's the morality in all of these films? It does seem like a lot of the people are the ones trying to get away from trouble. Those are the most virtuous people. And so maybe it's less subversive, just kind of on overall. But yeah, like what Nick was saying about Barbie was there's this style that's become normative. These art that is self-referential, it's postmodern, and it seems like the characters know that they're being written about. And he cited one of those newer Star Wars movies where there's that joke about they fly now. The stormtroopers are like flying. And there's like you see it in the Marvel humor. Like it's not just that it's normie, because I don't think that's the extent of a lot of the critique. It's not just like you have a commercial audience and then you have an esoteric audience. David Lynch wouldn't translate with that audience, but we're trying to like blend the two together. That's not the critique, I don't think. I think it's more like, why does the extent of a lot of art have to be political? And that's what goes back to what I was saying about everything I said earlier. You know, if everything is political and everything is relative, that's kind of the biggest red flag with postmodernism, is the fact that you can't really make moral claims in art. You don't really get the hierarchy and the discipline that comes with it. I mean, that's more of an obvious point, but the things like David Lynch films also seem to be caught in that criticism. So that's why, you know, like I said earlier, it's not like a big deal that people like all this, you know, junk. But when we're trying to like make a metric of art, it seems like there would have to be a hierarchy, which would make it difficult to quantify, you know, things that are postmodern but less social programming versus things that are both. And we can obviously dismiss them outright. And so I think it's just more of an awareness thing. And obviously Nick was very critical and said that, you know, it's basically a bad thing. It's a psyop that something like Barbie looks like this. Even if you like the flashiness, even if you like, it's more up tempo than a conservative film. And so I saw like Beardson was more positive towards Barbie. And so, you know, it's like, because it's not just there's bad politics in it, it's the fact that like everything about it is kind of the antithesis of the straight story, and it's the antithesis of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The fact that what we really want is just a simple film, and something like Joker is the opposite of Barbie, even though it's nihilistic, and something like Taxi Driver could be seen as like a subversive film for political reasons. Ultimately, that movie's message doesn't subvert the way that a movie like Barbie kind of does. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it was interesting to see people like dress up for the movie and show up. You don't really see that. You know, it seems like people are talking about how Hollywood is dead and the industry is at an all-time decline. People would rather go on Netflix, the kind of Spielberg take. But, you know, when people were criticizing Barbie and Oppenheimer, it just kind of like, it made me very skeptical of a lot of the stuff that I would usually be positive towards. So that's the thing. And I don't know if anyone else got that takeaway. I was probably overthinking it like usual. But that was just something that came out of the summer, was it's like, and honestly, I should probably disavow that Derrida and Guittara to continue the mispronunciation of names on the stream. The French philosophers that I did a speech, and they were a part of it, the talk. You know, like Carlsbad was telling me in our interview on the channel, maybe there is no right-wing way to do the Frankfurt School style of things, the kind of the cultural critique, you know, maybe all of the deconstruction is the heart of, you know, everything that is happening today. Like the intellectual contribution, like what Keith Woods was talking about, the tools that we're using are also part of that subversion. So when you defend certain Hollywood projects, like that's part of the modernity. So that's the thing. That was just something, not a lot of people like did that full review of the two movies, but that was kind of the main thing. You know, this was the summer where usually most people don't go to the theaters at all. And there were two movies that people were hyped up about. And then I see them and I'm like, it's almost like I got my appetite from pop culture on Twitter. Like that created this standard that made all of the Hollywood movies just not stand up to par. So maybe it's really like Twitter, social media beating Hollywood being like an old medium in the digital age. So I know that's like an overly dramatic takeaway. These are just like two Hollywood movies, but it honestly like filled in gaps of some of the Keith Woods videos and some of Jordan Peterson's critiques on postmodernism, because I think a lot of people were wowed by, oh my goodness, this guy is so smart. You can compete with all the things happening today with modernism. You can use Nietzsche and you can break modernity with a hammer. And, Academic Agent is often talking about Evola in that kind of way, this return to like a golden age. But all of that stuff is still political, and it still doesn't help Zoomers, and it doesn't help the future, and it doesn't, all that stuff kind of exists on a cycle. And you're swapping out the Marvel movies and you're replacing it with, instead of conservative media, it's dissident right media. Wow. That's what an improvement. I'm not a consumer. I'm a dissident right consumer, right? But anyways, that was just to go over those two movies, because I know that was like a big happening on Twitter, and the show was absent during all the hype. I know it's also old news now, so I apologize for that. I apologize for waiting too long from the Oppenheimer and Barbie hype, I mean. So, Richard Crook, I still feel there's something about this Barbie thing that's eluding me. Didn't know about people dressing up to watch it. Yeah, well, at my theater, I don't know if that was a trend. I imagine it was. How is Carlsbad these days? Is there anywhere to get in touch with him? Carlsbad, I don't know. I haven't. I know. So you may have asked that in the last stream too, Jack. But yeah, I don't know what he's up to. Barack Obama is back. People should check out what he's up to. He was talking about like William S. Burroughs. I guess he's on like a Burroughs type arc right now. So maybe that kind of gels well with what we've been talking about. Like maybe I should just read more of the beatniks and, people like T.S. Eliot and Tolkien. I'm trying to look for like media to talk about, and maybe like the bulk of to develop religious identity philosophy. Maybe I should just go back further. Like that's the thing. I'm grasping for all these things recently, and really it's like it's just a lack of cultural literacy on my part. So another obvious point, but just JF loved the Barbie movie, thought it was hilarious. Yeah, it's like the Ryan Gosling stuff, is kind of unintentionally funny, and maybe that's kind of another thing. How liberal art, like what Thomas was saying, how liberalism has ceased to be fun, and they became the thing that they were yelling against. Again, a tired talking point, but same thing with that's kind of we see it visibly when we're talking about Greta Gerwig. We see it visibly when it's feminists trying to make something smart and cool. People say, oh my goodness, this is window dressing for materialist philosophy, anti-metaphysical thinking. And then you look at the dissident right, they engage in the exact same logic, and they're like, but this is base, but this is Ryan Gosling. And it's like, oh, okay. That's what the art criticism has over the political thinkers. Like, that's where the anti-rat or the non-rational thinking has an advantage over the rationalists, okay, the neo-reactionaries, what have you. You wanted Lana Barbie? Yeah, we got it. We got to be careful. Why didn't Lana do a song for Barbie? Maybe that's part of her arc. Maybe that's maybe that's a good thing that she was not dazzled by the Barbie marketing. And who was it? It was Nicki Minaj who did the song in the credits. Maybe that's why another aspect of Lana, she would never stoop down to this very commercial, fake romanticism. We want real religious romanticism. Maybe that's the actual right-wing takeaway from Barbie. But So yeah. Maybe these were like the heavy hitters of modernity. Oppenheimer on the intellectual front, Barbie on the cultural front, and they both lost. They were both not cool. They were both not timeless. Like, I'm not even convinced Oppenheimer is going to be like a very revered movie moving forward. You know, it might have a similar disadvantage like Tenet, where people kind of forget about it. So that's the thing, just kind of the limitations of Christopher Nolan, the limitations of, you know, people were talking about Tarantino earlier. Like, you know, I used to be very impressed with the nonlinear, smart, you know, it's exploitation films, but smarter. But at the end of the day, it's kind of just an exploitation film. So, you know, it just kind of, it helps. It helps to see the limitations of some of these things. And then we can apply them to like political movements. Yo, Gen Z intellects for the win. That's the goal. That's the goal. It's like, I don't want to be a boomer. I don't want to be carrying water for, you know, Shielding's events, and you know, I don't want to have a Bronze Age mindset. I don't want to latch myself to you know, people on Twitter that have big followings just because that's like the only way to do online activism. It's like I liked, you know, I liked the people that just kind of talked about things, like journalists, and we're also based, you know, the people that read like Un's articles, people that just didn't have to show off, that could just be themselves, you know, like the Groypers, you know, people that just kind of hang around and are, you know, kind of seem to be up to their own thing. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. That's all. That's the, to sum up the stream and the show. Like, yeah, you know, that's why. That's why I say I'm not as political as others. If you don't know about the prosthetic nose uproar, yeah. Bradley Cooper's doing some movie, Maestro, and he's directing it too. So it's not like he can hide behind him just playing the role. He's also like, seems to have a bigger role. So that's funny. Just for a thought experiment, what the H is a DS movie, and it can't be like the Patriot with DS, Nintendo DS. You mean like dissident movie? And it can't be like the Patriot. Yeah, like the stereotype that like um oh, like Clint Eastwood movies. Oh, and again, like that's still boomer. You know what I mean? Like the guy said earlier, like every model for the distant right is people older than us. That was the thing that stood out about me when I would consume conservative media. You know, you would have Shapiro and Charlie Kirk, and it's like Charlie Kirk is relatively young because he's not as old as someone like Dennis Prager. But it's like, here's all these 30 somethings leading the young movement, the college movement. It's like, no, Zoomers need to represent themselves. Like when I saw Nick speak at, or I wasn't there physically, but that famous Amran speech he gave, that seemed to be like a signal to the Zoomers, like, hey, here's representation. You know, if you were to get into the distant right, it would be all these people that are 30 and older, you know, people that can afford to live on their own, you know, a luxury that maybe some of us younger guys don't have. And it's just like, not just like, oh, like I need to see, like, it's very important for young people to see themselves doing things, to see themselves articulate things separate from the boomers, separate from, you know, the intellectual side of the dissident right. You know, it's kind of a game changer to see Zoomers and Groypers meeting in real space and hosting events. And, you know, they're not, it's obvious that like when you go to a GOP meeting and you see a bunch of boomers and then they have the young people to prove that this is not like an out of touch crowd. You know, like I went to a National Review event near me, and it's these two guys. One of them's like an atheist, and the other guy is like what is it, Rob Lowry, or yeah, it's just one of those like conservative media pundits. And I'm sitting there and it's so boring for me because I don't see myself in any of this presentation. You know, we can rehash American history. We can talk about the woke left. But there's nothing cultural here. There's nothing like, it's all just Reagan conservatism. It's all, And that same thing happens in the dissident right, where it's not Shapiro and Kirk. It's, it's older books. It's older books. But then it seems like people are not developing their religious identity. People are not actually interested in things outside of the political philosophy. And so it's like, oh, okay, so it's just another consumer hive mind. So that was dissident right. You meant dissident right. Yeah. Well, I think in my rants there, that's what yeah, it's like you don't even the media, the right-wing media. Okay, that would have been a nice opener. Right-wing media can be better. Right-wing Zoomer content can doesn't have to sound like dissident right. Zoomers can kind of have their own space, and they don't have to compete with the millennials. The millennials can just do their thing, and it's friendly. It's probably not going to be amicable for generational rivalry purposes. But yeah, it's like that should tell you something. We agree on people say we agree on 90% of the issues, but then we fight. It's like, yeah, because it's not just about the issues. It's not just a political movement. It's supposed to be bigger than that. So anyways, that was the whole, gosh, in too many words, in too many words, it's just about like improving right-wing media to not be this offshoot of the kind of boomer dissident right. And then you have people on Twitter that talk like, they want to be philosophers and professors. And really, they're just like people like me. They're just like people wandering around. It's like, why do you have to signal to me? Let's just be friends. Let's just hang out. But, again, it's outside of that mindset to just hang out, The art critics hang out. Those are the people that are mellow. People that, are really into politics, they cluster towards a certain side. So John Milius, yeah, maybe John Milius, maybe. So, yo, Easton Broadcast. Did you come from Instagram? Dissident Right and Con Inc. are united in disdain for soggy. Okay, let's reel it in a little bit. Let's, this is a family-friendly show. Okay, this is straight story tier. Not, Mulholland Drive has all this like subversive stuff in it, vulgar stuff in it. And, to bring it back to Oppenheimer, like, what is with that scene in Oppenheimer? Like, why does that have to be on the screen? There's no purpose for having just like vulgar things in a movie. And someone like Christopher Nolan is kind of like this more smarter branch of like modern filmmakers, but even he put it in his own movie. He has to put something vulgar in there, and it's just like, this is just like playing into the degenerate appetite craving audience. Like we don't need just like vulgar scenes. We don't need sex scenes in movies. It's like there's nothing, if you are this like grandiose director, you don't have to like stoop down and do all the tropes. Not just those tropes, but like the political stuff at the end of the movie. It's like, what? Everybody's imaginations are as far as their politics, Disgusting. I owe a thank you for showcasing Thomas 777. Whoops. We demand. Okay. Zhang. If we could just pull back just a little bit, just a little bit of restraint. What was this, Enrico? I discovered him through your channel. Thanks for that. That dude is epic. Thank you, man. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, Thomas is the man. What else? Did I miss anything? What else do we got here? Twitter Spaces have been fun, man. Twitter Spaces have been popping off. If you guys are ever interested, people like Jack, Vingel, 2 Cents, some of the regulars here, this show can happen on the the Twitter space. But yeah. Did I miss anything? Did anything else happen? My goodness, this was an extensive stream. And I'm sorry if it's like stream of consciousness. That it's probably annoying for some people to listen to. I'm not. I don't mean to be like I'm trying to be profound in the sense of like I'm trying to organize my thoughts and not make the mistakes of other dissident right channels. But I'm sure it's annoying to try to like articulate this like to basically try to do like a new right perspective. Sorry if it's. I'm sure you guys have heard this stuff from other people in different ways. So sorry for the rehashing. Here, I got to scroll up. I got to. We can start to be a little more casual. I can start to enjoy the stream. I usually I try to prepare for the stream, but really it's like we should all just hang out. I should take my own advice. What do we got? What does Hollywood even have left to say? Yeah. But yeah, thank you, True. Struggling over here. Surprised Hanks wasn't in Oppenheimer, considering all the roles he does. Yeah. I saw people were bothering Nick about Greyhound with Tom Hanks. That's like a war movie. That's kind of funny. That became like a bit on the show. But yeah, what else? I guess the Pedro Gonzalez hit piece that happened while I was away. The other thing too, I was in a space yesterday and people were talking about, because it seems like we have these contradictory positive narratives of the distant right. We're to the right of the GOP. So when people say far right, it's descriptively true because people act like there's no alternative to right-wing politics outside of, feckless populists like the Tories and Republicans. But there is an alternative way to be right-wing. And to call it far right, it's like what people were saying in the space yesterday. Will, if you're tuning in here, he was talking about how like in the 90s, you have things like Peter Brimelow, and like there was this debate with about immigration where one of the people affiliated with the Huffington Post, she was on Peter Brimelow's side talking about restrictions on immigration effectively. And it's like 90s conservatism was far right by today's standards. And so when you concede that you're far right and you try to lean into how like radical you are, you're basically you're volunteering to have your credibility torn up, because really at the end of the day, you're just normal and everything else is radical. Global liberalism is radical. All this stuff is new. And, the fact that people couldn't like physically, two different groups couldn't integrate because there was a lack of transportation. And, the idea that tech is responsible for a lot of the culture change, etc. Like taking a step back from the political condemnation and looking at all of how the economy and the tech is more responsible. People have heard that. But what was I going with that? Oh my goodness, that's embarrassing. But yeah, something about that like we're like it would probably just be better, not just like optics, but like it would just be like just to emphasize that you're normal, and then like to emphasize the radical part of your politics is really the ball's in the court of like liberals to justify why they think anti-metaphysics, modernity, all that stuff is, they should be the ones that can't justify their philosophy. Why are we on the defense when like 30 years ago this was all mainstream? So yeah, it's like when I lean into the art critic stuff, that kind of goes hand in hand with that. Like, oh, you're like the biggest politician of all because you're a satirist. You're like a Cicero trying to make a point that politicians, have to water down. And it's like, I mean, conceptually that's kind of similar, but at the end of the day, like if it's not for a political end, then it's not really political. And I'm not even telling people to like I'm not even endorsing certain candidates. And so, like, if anything, like what I do is very antithetical to like partisans who are like anxious to tell you to vote for somebody and toe a party line. It's like, yes, you could say like it's more interesting to be like a cultural pundit than a political one because the political one is limited. But yeah, it's like it goes hand in hand with that space yesterday. That's why spaces like that are interesting because again, we can just kind of like address some of the discourse that are in our spheres. I know Keith Woods was very he was very vocal in the reclaiming socialism from the left, and I not to say I even like completely agree with his take, but like you go in nationalist circles and you're like, I thought these people were supposed to be my friends. I thought we were going to get along. I thought we agreed with the political values, and then it was all hunky dory. But really, the stuff that mattered more. It seemed like for Keith, for me, and just the direction that I was going in and the people I was checking out, Thomas, Catherine D, all of it was cultural because Twitter is where the tastemakers are, things that develop in the political arena seem to start on Twitter. So that's the thing. I'm like a Twitter partisan. I'm a art critic. That I'm a real journalist. Like people try to adopt liberalism, adopt all these these mixtures of ideologies. How about I'm trying to reclaim journalism? Journalism became partisan, and I like the more people who don't really put out their take. I'm kind of like Charles Murray. I just kind of say too much. I'm like Sam Huntington. You come to very conservative conclusions, but he himself is the most establishment guy you could probably think of. So maybe that also kind of helps. Again, this stream, it's not totally organized, but I just, this is just people migrate to different chats and streams and Twitter accounts. This is where we can just like hang out. People call this the Double R Diner. Okay, well here it is. The Double R Diner is where you get all these theory cells together and they talk about, what movies they like. You know what I mean? Very different crowd than like this millennial Twitter space. Everybody's like wants to get into a debate, and it's like, dude, Blood Sports was 2018. The debates happened. I think we're all done with the political identity. We're it's about developing your cultural taste and what can come out of that. So, all right. The last repetition of the stream, hopefully. Here, I'll go up to the top here because okay, I don't want to miss anybody's chats. I don't want to neglect. This is a long stream, and I want people to also do not send money to this channel. Do not send money to this channel. Do not send cash because as far as I know, I can't. The cash is like it's connected to the account, but it's like there's a threshold for like before you can cash it in. So I don't know what the YouTube like super chat function, like how it operates. So do not send money. If you have a question, just like ask in the chat. Bother me about it in the chat. If I forgot your chat from like an hour ago, tell me right now, put that in the chat because I want to hang out with you guys. You guys are my friends. This is the line that I toe. It's the people just kind of hanging out on a Saturday evening. I just want us to be, I want us to talk, I don't want to read about some ideology in a reactionary book. I just want to like hang out with people I thought were cool in high school. So and check out Catherine D stuff. Catherine D stuff is that's another thing that's been happening a lot while I was gone. Everybody is more successful at what I want to do than me. So everybody who's making it, congratulations. Have another victory lap. And hopefully the small audience that I can gather, hopefully our audiences can merge because a lot of real journalists out there, a lot of pop culture critics, a lot of people kind of seeing the limitations of the distant right, whatever you want to call that. It's a big hodgepodge. Let's just all have this kind of gray alliance that is kind of in name only. You know, we don't even have to call it a movement. It's just like it's a place where we can all meet up and go watch Grimes or something. So, all right. Sorry, I'm sorry. I got to be able to, maybe this semester, if people are starting their semester in a couple of days or have already, congratulations. If people graduated last semester, congratulations. How's everyone's summer? All that stuff. Tell me what's been going on with you guys. I've become more and more removed from politiques, unless it secures our guys more power. Turn to anti. Hey, there we go. Was that Mutant? Hey, thank you, Mutant. Yeah, that mindset. That's what I mean by anti-politics. It's not minimizing. It's not, I mean, yeah, there's a quality of saving face, not leaning into the caricature that, you know, all these journals want to write a hit piece about, you know, they want to use all these labels to pigeonhole people. I mean, really, we're just hanging out. So, and we don't feel like we have to like get into the discussions, the happenings, you know, it's like we're doing our own thing. Zoomer friendly thing. Hey Ma, the handsy music guy is here. No, not Grove. Yeah. Thank you, John. Not real name. I recognize that name. Mona has a clip about Nietzsche being, oh my goodness, who made up philosophy. Oh my goodness. Well, I don't want to engage in gossip. Excuse me. I don't know about that, Mutant. You're gonna have to. I don't know too much about that. I can't believe people like Destiny even exist. Yeah, no, there's something interesting about that. Again, hopefully this isn't engaging in drama. I hope this isn't like low discourse, but like there is something to the fact that like Adam 22, Destiny, who are some of these others, like the Red Pill Manosphere. That's another thing that seems to be, that was another development this summer was Manosphere people. Like if you guys saw Nick on Valuetainment, you had all these Red Pill community types. And like that's a community. It's funny, like people are eager to like throw their weight behind people that say certain things, but it's like all these people, they're just like hedonists. They're, you know what, again, it's like if you look at things strictly through a political lens, you would see an ally in some of these people. And it's like, yeah, it's cool that they don't like disavow people in the distant right. They're not like trying to save face the way, you know, all these other like the way some of these more like moderate right wingers are. So yeah, it's cool that they'll let people on their show, and there is more of an open dialogue relative to legacy media, but it's still just so lame. These guys are just talking about dating advice, and not even in a cool way. It's like this self-help book bodybuilder advice. Like how much more of that do we need on the timeline? So yeah. I'm sorry I missed the coverage of Just Pearly things and Andrew Tate. I don't know. I checked some of it out. It's just kind of boring. But yeah, it's cool that they'll let people on their shows. That's like the benefit of it. And so it is kind of like a place to let out views, and maybe it gets on people's timelines, like normie people heard of Andrew Tate. So yeah, it's like it's another vehicle, but again, it's like I think we're trying to get away from the idolatry stuff. It just gets very annoying. Haven't been seeing much from Thomas 777 lately. Wonder what he has been up to. Yeah. I think him and Pete Canones are going to be doing their stuff. I also had Sweet Tea over in Tennessee. I'm very glad that happened. I was kind of longing for it because I think you can get Sweet Tea in different states, but maybe the quality's a bit different. Maybe Southerners can kind of check my privilege. Maybe it's not authentic. It's kind of like Tex-Mex isn't real Mexican food. Or maybe people prefer the synthetic Mexican food because that's what they grew up with. It's funny. Again, not an endorsement, but I think in one of the spaces over the summer, or maybe it was before, Spencer was talking about like maybe there's something to the fact that Tucker Carlson, another person who people kind of do the idolatry stuff with, maybe there's something to the fact that Tucker Carlson, his family business, Swanson, is the Hungry Man TV dinners. The idea that the fact that his family's legacy is fake, synthetic food production kind of goes hand in hand with him being part of the fake right. Now, again, maybe that's a little petty to say that in a Twitter space, but I feel like conceptually that's the kind of thinking that happens on this show. The idea that some of these very bizarre connections are being made. And maybe some people just like having Hungry Man TV dinners. Maybe that's some projection on my part. Maybe there's nothing wrong with like having some mac and cheese, Stouffer's mac and cheese. Like, I don't know. Maybe this is like me coping because I'm a Zoomer and I'm a college student who likes ramen and things like that. Maybe I'll grow out of it. I'll graduate from this materialist shackle that's chaining down my true identity. My potential is being thwarted by the Swanson family. Very difficult stuff. I don't know. I should eat real food, I guess. Whatever. Everybody wants to like tell each other what to eat, raw eggs, and this workout routine. It's like, why don't you just leave everybody alone? Why doesn't everybody just like figure it out separately, and we don't have to fill the timeline with all this like Jocko Willink stuff? Yeah. I guess the other thing that happened was that Martyr Made, the Twitter account, who does a show the Jocko Willinks, that just reminded me, he does like some show with him, and he got into some trouble on Twitter because he was like, he's counter signaling some like anti-immigration takes and how it's beyond the scope of, it's beyond our power to like want to go back to like pre-19th century America. And so he was punching right and saying, some of this anti-immigration talk is limited. And there was this big fiasco. Did you guys see this on the timeline? There was some infighting, and it seems this has happened before. But it's just kind of interesting. People that come into Twitter, they build up this audience, and then they end up fighting their own audience. They end up on the receiving end of this kind of tough guy, right wing, dissident talk, and people end up not wanting to be, super political. And maybe like Amanda Milius was in a similar case, maybe from a different perspective. She like got into politics with that Plot Against the President film or something, and then she was like, "Wait a second, political people are not really gelling with her. Maybe she should just like talk about sports." And maybe for her specifically, the situation's a bit different because maybe there's too many, something like that's a little too connected for us to totally relate to. But that's kind of how I feel when I go on Twitter and I see things that I'm being told I should like or tolerate. And at the end of the day, it's like, books about the Sunset Strip and CBGBs, like that's always been how I wanted to talk about politics. It was never like, it was never this like continuation of the neo-reactionary, people from 2017, this intellectual, what comes after Curtis Yarvin, it was never that try hard. It was always just kind of this fun-loving 4chan attitude who just so happened to like be vaguely aware of some of the literature that was getting shared around. So hopefully that's a little bit more innocent compared to like somebody who's a pundit. But this show is kind of like punditry, so it's a gray line. Maybe that's one of the things of the internet, is everything is hard to get away from. So I don't know. That was a lot right there. Maybe I should check the more recent comments. What do we got here? Yo, Just Jimmy's. Hey, my friend, Just Jimmy's. Glad to see him in chat. Yeah, it seems like Just Jimmy's had like the ideal arc where, it got for him, it was like I saw him get less political and more religious from my perspective. And that's where these ideas, I would imagine it to take people. Because if you understand that there is gatekeeping and subversion on the right, you will cluster towards the dissident stuff, but then you'll find that the dissident stuff has limitations, and then you'll find something cultural or higher. But it seems like for some people, they have a different process. There's a different lineage. Hey, thank you, Just Jimmy's. Thank you, man. I don't want to miss your guys' statements here. Yeah, that's the other thing. Maybe the big subversive thing was Hegel. Maybe I was also doing myself a disservice by doing that. I was thinking of people like Bowden and Nietzsche, but really people like Hegel were actually keeping me from my full potential. Yeah, hey, there you go. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Yeah. Nick at Night. Not Nick, not that Nick. Nick at Night was supposed to be the real cultural unity. Hungry Man TV dinners are way too expensive for that quality and size. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Okay, I won't push back against that. Wait, I forgot to mention, I do check in on my autist on Twitter. Okay, yeah, Brian E, message me on Twitter. I would like to organize some West Coast Zoomer-friendly people so that we could meet up in LA. I would like to do that. But we'll see. We'll see what's up. My goodness. Is Gavin Newsom still cool? See, I don't even know the Gavin Newsom lore. Like, that's the thing. Like, this political stuff. Like, what are people even talking about? RFK, Vivek, something. Dude, I'm like trying to listen to albums. Hey, Ace, I missed most of this, but glad you are well. Hey, thank you, Egon. Good to see you here, man. Red Lobster or Applebee's for encountering American orcs? Oh, that's the other thing. What did I order in? I had some like catfish. Yeah, catfish was. I don't know if I've had that on a previous trip, but yeah, catfish. I was kind of like the most that I ate was that more than once. So yeah, I guess we introduced Keith to the American style of cuisine. It was an honor to be there. I hope it didn't come across as like too American in the cliche sense. He mentioned like he pulled up to America and it's like, you see all these brands that you're all these cultural items, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's. It's like this is the place. You have arrived in America. Yeah, I'm sure that was very jarring. But yeah, catfish I liked, and sweet tea. So, I can't counter signal the South too much. I was very happy with the food. And last year I think I had sweet tea once. And what else did I have? Oh, I think I had some catfish, but I don't remember the experience quite well. Because I think what I ordered was like a club sandwich or something, or I had it earlier that day, or maybe the day before. So I don't really remember the eating experience last year, but this year was probably more memorable because I tried something new. And then the stuff that they served at Ameren, it was like steak and potatoes. I mean, these guys really got some good food down in the South. So, I guess it makes me want to step outside the Cinnamon Toast Crunch and TV dinners. Maybe you guys got a point. Maybe the South is radicalizing my appetite. Maybe that's kind of the acceleration that's happening more so than the political speeches, the pep rally talk on stage. The most radicalizing thing is the fact that I could get sugary tea while I'm eating like some Southern cuisine. So hey, I'm glad I could have something very like distinct from that area. Probably won't have something like that in LA next month. So yeah. Also, what's today? The 19th? On August 22nd, that's my birthday. So I guess this is kind of a early birthday-ish stream. Did I do a birthday stream last year? What do we got here? I don't remember. Oh gosh, would I have to look at the date? What would that be? What would let me see when this was. October. So that's too early. Oh, is this it? Oh, okay. I think I did. Oh, that's like September. September, yeah. Oh, so it doesn't look like I really did. Unless I'm getting the dates wrong. Oh, I think I didn't go back far enough. Oh, proto birthday stream. Here we go. Okay. So yeah, there was one called proto birthday stream. All right. Yeah, I don't know. This is kind of the birthday stream, isn't it? I mean, what else am I going to talk about in the next 2 or 3 days? I'm going to be 24 years old. My goodness. 24 years old, mid 20s approaching. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I think about that. Whatever. The way that I look, I think the circumstance is a little different, so I don't feel too weird about it. But yeah, I guess you're not 20 permanently. I guess time keeps marching forward. I guess. So, all right. So yeah, I guess this is kind of the birthday stream. What's on my birthday list? See, I don't really think about stuff like that, like gifts. I don't know. I just kind of do my thing again. Like I feel like that's the Zoomer thing. It's sad that people try to disenchant the world and things like holidays don't seem to hold weight because that was like a time, like what Robert Putnam says about the community that happens even in the little things like clubs and holidays. And yeah, it's like birthdays also kind of seem to mean less as time goes on. And, it's like, I guess it's just a time to be introspective and appreciate the fact that, I can, if we have family or friends, it's like, it's not supposed to be like I'm supposed to get something. It's supposed to be like I'm happy. I'm not supposed to want, you know what I mean? Maybe that's a Kantian point. You're not supposed to, the religious process is not supposed to be like wanting. It's supposed to be, you're just supposed to do your thing authentically. So yeah, it's like, what, it's that's all you should need is you're with your family and friends. And that goes to say what I said earlier, we're all just kind of hanging out. So that's all it was ever supposed to be, not like this not this very unreachable goal. So yeah, 26 is when you get old. Oh boy. Yeah, I don't even want to think about it. All right. Let's move on. Well, let's change the topic if you don't mind. My goodness. Zoomers seem to be aging less rapidly than their ancestors now. I'm curious about that. I'm 24. And someone the other day thought I was 19. Well, hey, tell me about it. Tell me about it, Jack. People think you look really young. Yeah, why, Jack, I think you gotta get in line with that one. It's tough out here. But I don't know. I guess that's better than the alternative, right? The alternative, right? Richard Crook, a big fan of tea. Yes. Switch the smoking with the tea. Yeah. Or stop smoking and then embrace sweet tea. I like that. I think that's a good arc. Oh yeah, Hunter Avalon. That was the other guy. Yeah, all these guys. Oh, was that the point that I didn't finish? That's so funny. Yeah, it's like all these guys naturally just become hedonists because they have nowhere else to go in their liberal lifestyle. You know what I mean? Sorry about that. That must have been very frustrating. a while ago when I was talking about that. Yeah, yeah. That. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Can you imagine me getting sidetracked? Um, yeah, it's just you know all these content creators, like, obviously there's a limitation with pluralism, liberalism, and you see that manifested in a lot of you know streamers like that and the pickup artist stuff, and even the red pill people. But that also applies to the distant right. Like, we think we're so much more enlightened because we're not. Well, even some people, seems like some people are hedonists, but yeah, it's like you know that's why a lot of people, public dissidents, are not like above criticism. So, all right, all right. I don't want to miss some of these earlier ones. Brian E, fix your sleep schedule. Let's go. All right, all right. What did I miss here? Yeah, the anti-Tarantino stance, but pro Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah, that seems to be consistent because it's such a different. And maybe that's his strength. Is like that was kind of him stepping outside of his limitations. So yeah, no, I understand. It's a lot of Tarantino stuff is kind of lowbrow. Um, what else we got here? Most young people these days treat older people like they don't exist. That first change with millennials is not a good thing. Oh, okay. Treat older people like they don't exist. The Jedi perspective. Thank you, man. Yeah, thank you. Hey, Truth Mystery. Hey, there you go. Hey, it's good to see you. What are you? When are you going to stream with Thomas again? I don't know. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. What's the point of politics or culture or anything without God? Exactly. Exactly. Jefferson Davis does a good show. True. True. Should be the starting point. Exactly. Yeah, and it's like everyone in the distant right, you don't really get that impression that that's the motivating. And maybe it's difficult to clarify because it's when you're talking about secular things like rock and roll and Hollywood, it's like seems like the thing that's taking up all the airtime are all these secular things. But I want to clarify, you know, it's not like the peak of like human action is, you know, going to the movie theater. You know what I mean? It's like there's some cool stuff we can talk about it with, but obviously we would never try to we shouldn't try to compete that with our religious identity. That's the clarification that often may not be clear. All right, what else? Yarvin beat poetry. Rose. Okay, okay, okay. Mac. Okay. Um, is Ace going back to school or is he taking? Thank you, TB88. Sorry for if all you guys are still in chat that typed this earlier. I just want to. I'm sorry this took so long. Um, is Ace going back to school or is he taking a semester off to ride trains in California? That does sound like the dream, but I will be going back to school in about like a day, in like less than 72 hours. My goodness. That's all right. I'll be disciplined though. That's the thing. I won't have an excuse to be lazy. So that's the thing. That's the thing. If you guys remember, like I would say some positive things about college. That's the thing. It gives your life some structure. So, you know, to me, it's a little too reactionary to be like, oh, college, that's where all the wacky liberals. It must be so difficult sitting in class. It's like, you know, just be cool, be mellow. Modern Zoomers have no culture. Everyone globally that speaks English is being homogenized into California circa 2014. Yeah, that's the thing. Like the Paul Scales stuck culture take. If it could be like California culture circa, like American Graffiti, like Modesto, California, um, George Lucas's, Beatnik America. And then it's like, yeah, I wouldn't say this is like the peak of culture itself, but it's like it's a frame of reference to step outside the kind of modernity, tech dystopia. All right, did I miss anyone here? Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, what Thomas says about what people doing far right politics like a hobby, it's like that's the thing. But then if you talk to them, they're like, yes, they believe this stuff and it's their philosophy, and it's like, yeah, you're supposed to like mix it with something else. It's like, could you imagine getting along with people at Ameren besides the politics? I remember a friend of mine mentioned something like, can you hold a casual conversation with like your girlfriend's dad? Like, there's the litmus test. And everybody's just like antisocial. And again, it's a Zoomer problem. I understand there is a fair critique from older people. Like, yes, people are stuck in a bubble, and it's easy to just kind of like be friends with everybody in that bubble. But at the end of the day, it's like we're not in this for politics' sake. They think they can just make dissident right-wing movies and TV, and they can usher in 1940s redo. Yeah, exactly. We have to take over the culture for it to come back. The left's art is all about destroying ours. Yeah, there's the I am 7076 type take. We was controversial. That's pretty funny. Thank you, Mutant. Yeah, sounding like Bart Simpson is so powerful and insightful. Hiding your true intentions is so courageous. Not actually caring about anything is free. Thank you, MF. I need to. That's pretty funny. Conservative May. It sucks people who do nothing are always the first to criticize. No one has surpassed Buckleyism, excuse me. Nor should want to. No one does debates anymore. Well, maybe in September in LA, maybe we can get some people to a debate. But I'm wondering if there has been a worthwhile debate about whether or not street politics are a net negative for distance. Well, it depends what you mean by street politics, because I don't think, obviously, things like rallies, banner drops, marches, 2017 era activism, like I think that's well past the expiration date. And what would qualify as like IRL activism, I'm not thinking of alt-right stuff. I'm thinking of like, what we were saying earlier about like a satirist is the ultimate politician, and this, that's like a form of activism you could interpret. And like if you got a bunch of guys writing for a magazine, if you did zines, if you went to film school and you had like a bunch of friends, those are helpful things to have at your disposal. Again, I refer to the I am 1776 article. Like, I'm not saying this is like, oh, I never even said what I thought was cringe. They have some article about like, they're trying to make like don't all these like liberal hippies that did LSD for liberal reasons. It's more based to be right wing and understand that people in Africa and like, the people in the ancient world were doing psychedelic stuff. And it's like it's trying to like reframe the historical record of like psychedelics, and it's just like at that point it's just we're trying too hard to adopt certain things. Like I understand people like it's my understanding that Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg didn't get along. And so you kind of have like, oh, there's some right-wing adjacent things in the hippie culture. But some people, it seems like, actually want to be hippies for better and worse. So, or actually scratch that. Mostly for, seems like exclusively for worse. So let me walk that back a little bit. But yeah, starting up zines, starting up like a local scene, like things like that, like a little art scene that's not like just paintings and poetry. If you could like do IRL stuff that was friendly to dissidents, that could be like a thing that could be a nice hub for people in certain areas. Like, why do we have to wait for like AFPAC, Amrin? Like, why do we have to wait like once a year? Why can't you just have like your own scenes in your own cities? But it seems like people kind of surrender that stuff because it's not political, it's not serious, we're not journalists. Okay. Zoomer's cave is greater than Plato's cave. Well, that's Plato has quite a high bar. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we can ever reach the Greek standard. Thank you, Mutant. Oh yeah, sorry, conservative Maze. So yeah, sorry. I think I was listing names earlier. I omitted the Groiper from the list. My bad. How does different movements over time and culture connect? Of course, it's just create and connect, but if you could speak on it. Well, like, I guess like what Stephen Hicks talks about, how socialism changed interpretations or expanded from like when Mussolini was into socialism versus when it got implemented into the Soviet Union. And it kind of like seems to get shared around different political spectrums, left-wing socialism, right-wing socialism, like in the Keith Woods video. Something like that can be adopted, and it's not to, we don't have to quibble over like what is true socialism, like putting the political theory aside. The idea that that's like a cultural, seemingly union-friendly, worker-based labor movement, and then it gets turned into a political movement when it gets implemented into policy. You have like a worker revolution. You have people radicalized, they're raising consciousness. And so the consciousness part could be cultural because it's like an intellectual movement at that phase, and then it develops into political action. And maybe something like, I guess socialism is like the best example. Like, to me, like some of the flaws with like Italian futurism as a movement is they're trying to tear down so many things, they end up tearing down some like what is it, like banning all the museums. It's kind of like it's kind of too transgressive. It's going after too many things, just like Nietzsche. It's I'm not radical to the point where I want to like abandon everything from the past and embrace the future. To me, that's like a counterproductive futurism. Like what Nick was talking about futurism in on one of his shows, I think after his rally. Well, I think after the first Fuentes rally. That's the kind of futurism I was describing. People here probably missed some of that. The idea that Christianity is like a futurist type concept or overlaps with it because it's about, redemptive history and striving towards the future, not just sticking with old customs. He didn't say all of that verbatim, but just as an example. And that's, I think, a more palatable model for what I'm talking about when I talk about pop culture rather than politics. So, yeah. The examples to speak on a little bit, the socialism example and the Italian futurist example. It's like, in some ways, they're kind of two sides of the same coin in that they're both tearing down things and not like rooted in religion or metaphysics. So that's where there's kind of a limitation. There's a very clear ceiling with, even if the futurists are like anti-feminist, anti the state of the world, that's not enough to like put an endorsement on it. So the clip between 777, Lady Shallot, and Academic Agent on the channel foreshadowed. Oh, really? Interesting. That's a bit of a hodgepodge. Locked out for over 2 months after poning. Okay. If we could have some optics in chat, maybe. Okay. 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 All right, Jack. I saw some of that. Oh, okay. Do we have some dialectics happening in chat? You folks try not to get into too much trouble now. It was fun interacting while we did, except. Oh, really? Okay. Interesting, Moose. I think Moose may have left already, but interesting. Photosynthetic Z. Yeah, maybe we were making a different point. Excuse me if I misrepresented the going to things ironically. Yeah, maybe there's something we can agree on with that. Oh, okay, that's an old clip. Okay, thank you. Where's the dono link? Oh yeah, don't worry about the dono link. No, don't send money to the show. Don't waste your money. Just like ask me a question because we're just hanging out. So yeah, I guess I'm stuck with Inland Empire. I'm gonna have to get into the nitty gritty. We'll see what happens. Thank you, Vingel, if you're still here. What do we got? What do we got? Yeah, even like Paul Schrader. Paul Schrader is kind of subversive in the Taxi Driver way. Well, I mean, that's because he was connected, but like that kind of like pessimism to me is demoralizing, and I don't think we need more demoralization. Like I think Keith made a point with the Nietzsche video asking if he's the answer in the title. It's like the idea that we need more demoralization, we need more consciousness. Gosh, that would have been a better way to open up the stream. All of these better ways of opening, I figure out towards the end of the stream. That's fantastic. But yeah, like what he was saying with his Nietzsche critique was, of course, this applies to the distant right, but just people more broadly. Everyone's demoralized. A lot of people are, and what's lacking in the distant right is positive things. So when people say you want to minimize the pessimistic critique because you don't know how bad things really are, we know how bad things really are. We've been in this cycle a bunch of times. So we're trying to find the next connection within the philosophy. But I think a lot of people, and maybe Dr. Duchesne is kind of an example of this, it keeps becoming this like history lesson of why we lost, and maybe some of the energy of where was that guy from? The guy from was it Belgium? Maybe some of the energy is correct, but he's doing it in a very pep rally sense, and so it's a little too on the nose as far as like, hey guys, just get out there and be the best version of yourself. So that's kind of the thing. It's not about critiquing these guys and tearing them all down. It's about there's supposed to be a less autistic way for those two things. You should have the smarts of Dr. Duchesne and the energy of the Belgian guy. Belgian. That was kind of like a better way of saying what I was saying. So sorry if I'm like figuring out how to do the show. It's been a while. Okay, it's been like 2 months. Excuse me. I'm sorry we had to wait till the end to get the thesis, to get the synopsis of Loud Sound Epicenter. So, hey, you know what? These shows are also very helpful for me because, it is kind of like me just yelling in my room by myself. It is kind of helpful organizing of the thoughts. So, yeah, thank you, 2 cents. What is this? And maybe like that's the ultimate way to just to talk about Hollywood. The idea of like you're talking when you're talking about all these films, you're also kind of just saying it. Some of these films just shouldn't be made in this way. So it's kind of somebody in the chat reminded me. All right, did I miss anybody here? Honestly, what on earth does Hollywood have left to say? Yeah, there you go. Just more liberalism, but with bad. Oh, what is this? The ending of A Straight Story got me. Without spoiling it, I was glad I went along with the old fella for the journey. Makes you assess your life, maybe. Hey, maybe this space can do that. Maybe the space can put things in perspective, I mean. All right. I just want to verify I didn't miss anybody. If Frankie is still here, hey, what's going on, Frankie? Sorry, I saw you earlier and I didn't say anything. Could a dissident movie be made today, and how could you comment on it? Oh, okay, sorry. Oh gosh, this was like over an hour ago. Oh my goodness. Um, well, this might sound a little try hard. Like, let's get a bunch of far right people in the movie business to a modern dissident culture. Well, it's I guess maybe that's kind of the thing is the fact that there's not so much of a real life dissident culture. It's time to like become writers, go to college and create like a casual space, have like a part of town where you guys can like hang out, that kind of a thing. And again, it's not like a biker club, but like something similar where like people are just like being themselves out and about, like hosting concerts, things like that. Just people that are not just running for office. That's all I'm saying. Obviously, people end up trying to like create this, what's a universe where everybody, you have like a based milkman and you have the mailman, all these areas of like Gramsci's like cultural hegemony, how far does it go across the spectrum of society? It's like we don't have to think like too big like that, but just like it would be cool if like in major cities, like New York seems to have like some, like Thomas said, like some avant-garde but friendly type people to right-wing artist types. So it's just kind of I and again, it's not like people should like make theater and things like that like specifically. It's just to illustrate like people getting out of politics and then kind of having a space, just like Twitter, doing Twitter kind of in a more less cringe, optical, social way. But yeah, there's not much of a dissident culture. Maybe that'll change. Maybe it'll get offline, and they'll just have these little things, like little, I don't know, like I just listed earlier. I'm like running out of examples, but yeah, a dissident movie. I mean, yeah, I think some of that stuff can get made. What was that? That guy that did those, Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn. Zoller or something. Yeah, like I mean, but even stuff like David Lynch, like the fact that David Lynch doesn't have explicit social programming. I mean, that's all I'm talking about. I'm not saying you need to have like a Clint Eastwood movie today, but it's just like having like optimistic media in the right wing scene. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not saying everybody has to learn how to paint and we need to go back to art class in high school, but just switch out the the symbols. All right. Oh yeah, how about the Napoleon movie? Yeah, that was another thing I think that happened while I was gone. Does anybody have a take on that? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. The Loud Sound Syndicate. Yeah, thank you, Bryony. I saw that earlier. What do we got? Let's link up and yo, Yeah, Jack, let's on Twitter, man, on Twitter. Are you still here, Jack? Yeah, we might be able to do something. Oh, hey, Howard quoting the show. Let's go. Well, we're well done with developing the political identity. People have found it. They found the banned books. Everyone's aware. Hey, hey. Thank you, man. Thank you. What do we got here? Was I going to look for something? Oh, just for Jack. Yeah, if we got any California people. Loudness epicenter. I'm like, interesting, interesting. Oh man, Klaus. I haven't. Um, I don't think I've checked out that Radix show. So what do we got here? Oh, Brian E. Brian E. left. Catch up when I get back. Peace out. Peace all. Thanks for the stream. Hey, no problem. No problem. I'm just glad you guys got to have a stream today. That was the goal. Just watched the Elvis movie from last year. Thought it was pretty meh, aside from the last 10 minutes of actual footage. Fair enough. Yeah, that's the thing. Even things like that can. Well, I remember Obese Goth said something to the effect of like the scene where he's like the scene is supposed to show how he's like rebelling against the Confederate governor type who's giving a speech, trying to raise awareness about how the culture is changing, and Elvis sings "Trouble." And Obese God said something like, "This scene makes for a compelling case of why someone could be anti-Elvis, because you're basically leaning into the transgressive archetype, like you are as bad as all the critics say." And so that's what I meant with like uh, heavy metal, where people lean into the dark stuff and the pessimism, and it's like, listening to heavy metal makes me happy. It makes me like I don't want to like wallow in sorrow listening to like most metal songs. So it's kind of like the opposite. The takeaway should be the opposite, but I think people just don't. They listen to certain things kind of in a maybe in like the first way that they come to think of it. So, but anyway. Oh yeah, the Twitter Spaces revolving around your experience and interactions in class. Yeah, yeah. No, those are funny. Yeah, that's let's see what happens this semester. I'm going to try to be on I should be on my best behavior. I should reel it in. But I am curious cuz like this semester it seems like I'm going to be taught there's the curriculum's going to be more based in like media culture, pop culture. So I might have some flexibility, but obviously in a disciplined way. So we'll see what happens. That's what's kind of fun about college is like Destiny said, not to be too complimentary towards him, but what he said about college being the last bastion of like this kind of free exchange of ideas. Obviously, it's very slanted, and people are anti right wing, and people effectively act like ideas are illegal. But I'm just saying, your average college campus, you could probably do your philosophy thought experiment with colleagues, and you could make friends. And so that's what I'm talking about with the cultural approach to the dissident right rather than the political one. You would probably make more progress in a academic setting As long as you're not spurging out and like citing dissident stuff. I'm not trying to encourage that. I'm saying if you can just be normal and get along with people in college, that's probably more worthwhile than going on a political campaign and working for some candidate. It just seems like a contradictory. It seems like two completely different avenues. So I think you know which one I'm leaning towards. Yeah, Jefferson Lee. Jefferson Lee. Yeah, no, people should not disrupt in class. I'm not, some of the the speeches I gave last year and the anecdote I gave the other time, I think in the last stream, those are like circumstantial things. Like obviously people should just make friends and be normal. So, but there does seem to be this impulse of like, should I signal? Should I? Maybe I would make more friends if I, did the super political approach. Maybe it's better to, out yourself or something to that effect. But it's, maybe it's the thing about college is it's like a social environment. Maybe that's the main thing is that's attractive to it is you're able to have conversations, and this is like the place to have a conversation rather than at the supermarket or whatever. So, all right, all right. Well, that's my goodness. What a what a long show. What a long show. My goodness. Well, if I missed anybody's questions, tell me now. Tell me now so that I don't neglect anybody. But I'm glad you guys tuned in. I thought this was fun. I'm glad I got to have a stream. And maybe some people are revving up for college. Maybe some people are anxious to talk about some of the dissident right stuff that happened over the summer. Those are the ones that I can remember. But yeah. I feel like I've explained the show way too much, and so like I'm out of material. So that's that. So that's that. Um, man, oh man. All right, all right. I guess I can check Twitter. All right, yeah. I gotta make sure I'm not missing any Twitter spaces too. Another priority. Another maybe it's an obsession. Maybe it's the wrong priority. We'll see. We'll see. Let me see. Let me see what we got. Did you get a chance to listen to the new doc and song? Yeah, I checked that out. That was interesting. The way that the intro meshed with the main riff, or it's like unplugged and then plugged, if I'm getting that right. So that was, yeah. That's the other thing. Maybe like people can just make music for Zoomers, and it's not this like LCD sound system or whatever. It's not like Pavement. Maybe we can just get some like more culture just in general for the sake of aesthetics. Return to conversations about. That's a question. Hey, maybe you're onto something, Mutant. Maybe you're onto something. Mutant, no. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. Yeah, like well, I guess you're saying melancholy. Maybe. There's like that emotional aspect to it, whereas some of the fast songs can become one-dimensional because there's not a lot going on beyond the speed. Maybe, maybe. All right, man. It does kind of feel like a 3.5 hour show. But I mean, I guess that was a lot of the summer. So, yeah, I don't know. Am I missing anything? Am I missing any lore? Am I missing any questions? That was cool for Keith Woods to stop by. That was pretty slick. I'm just glad there's just normal people out there. I'm just glad everybody that's in the sphere is not exclusively, trying to signal to other people. My goodness. All right, all right. White Boy Summer. Hey, there you go, Jack. Nudge unit. That's interesting. You started. You started that. All right, all right. So yeah, so yeah. Oh, are we losing? Are we losing connection here? I'm gonna give it a sec in case it's malfunctioning. I'll scroll up. Okay, looks like it was done there. All right, all right. I don't know what that was. Well, all right. So yeah, the show. You guys got a show today, and I'm probably going to LA next month, so that's coming up. And then yeah, I guess my birthday. My birthday is in like on the 22nd. So this is a proto birthday stream. What else? What else? Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens for the rest of the year. We'll see what kind of content happens on Twitter. If you're not following me on Twitter, if you want to check out what's going on with the show, I'm active on Twitter, Twitter Spaces. This show effectively happens on Twitter Spaces. So if you saw some of the people in chat and you recognize them from Twitter, we're all probably in a similar sphere. So okay, connections. Okay, cool. And so yeah, that's about everything. Thank you, Vingol, for recommending the Straight Story. I gotta figure out Inland Empire. Maybe if you're on Twitter or if you're on Telegram. Yeah, I think you're on Telegram. That's the other thing. The Telegram. The Telegram. If you guys want to share stuff, bring it over there. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with this article. I just want people to start up magazines, create a scene that's good optics, dissident in a less autistic way, less millennial showboating. That's the pitch for the show. Reminder that I am try to have a religious identity, and maybe that's not obvious because we talk about a lot of pop culture and politics, but that should be the most important thing, and all the stuff that we talk about should be towards something, a greater good. And I know that a lot of other channels, people max out their politics over there. Maybe this is a little more casual and more like a 90s radio show, but not like a totally hobbyist type thing. Maybe this is the ultimate type of politics. Is this kind of all right? All right, we're starting to sum up the show again, but delete a Telegram. Oh, is that right? And I don't bother. Yeah, That might be for the better. Yeah, given what we've said about some previous films. Yeah. Hey, thank you, Mutant. Thank you, Mutant. There we go. All right. Well, hey, thank you guys. Let me thank you guys one last time before we close up shop. Richard Crook, a lot of the regulars. Richard Crook, Mutant, Winston Wolfe, Nudge Unit, Just Jimmy's, bass guitarist, Vingel. What do we got? What do we got? Brian E., Jack. Jay the informant, and then Easton Broadcast. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you. Glad you guys were here, and take it easy. Take it easy. I don't know when we'll be back. Take it easy, and I'll. Whoops. All right. Take it easy, guys.